Sort of Coming Chapter 908. A couple of young men and women on the southeastern coast of Ao Ping Chao strolled through a racking shop in a county seat, and then came to the wine shop next door and picked a table against the wall. The man ordered a caddy of Mao Chai wine and some side dishes with wine, the woman an extra plate of salted plum breast. The man looked up at the poems written on the wall of the village middle school. The woman glanced, twisted a sour plum and chewed it. It was sour. The man took out a book from the bookcase and put it on the table while serving a bowl of alcohol, while flipping through a book on physiognomy. He likes to read miscellaneous books, and even the art of wind horn, bird occupying and loneliness is involved in daily life. The good name is that there are more arts and no pressure when you go out, one more craft, one more job. A woman's eyebrows are winding like a spring mountain. She seemed to be worried, frowning, and couldn't help but ask in her heart, "Yulu, do you think I can refuse his request?" Someone sent her a letter before saying that she was planning to take her as a registered disciple. It's not the kind of protégé who enters the house, and it's okay to change the house or stand on her own when she enters the upper 5 realms in the future, but the other party is more so. She was so talkative, the more she felt lost in her heart. In fact, she was bullied by that unpredictable guy on the way to study. Yulu said, "I think it's actually a good thing. This is something that is destined to be irresistible, and it is useless to think more." It's just that Yulu didn't say this sentence, less thank you for hearing it more and more worrying. After all, the sender is Cui Dongshan. Thank you angrily. Do you think? Then why don't you become his registered disciple? Yulu smiled and put it down. As a pure martial artist himself, what can Cui Dongshan teach? Besides, he has such a relationship with Qin Pingan, Cui Dongshan really dare not take advantage of him. Thank you for knowing that I was so irritated and it didn't make sense to provoke my anger, so I raised the wine bowl as a plea for it. Yulu patiently explained, now that your status has changed, Cui Dongshan will soon become the lord of the sect. After getting along with you, he will converge a lot. Moreover, Cui Dongshan has a high realm and many magic weapons. Aside from the strange temper, he will be the one. Preacher, right? For any earth fairy, it is a good thing to dream of. Thank you for still worrying. General, ordinary, reasonably, these statements resting on the big white goose have never worked. Thank you for holding back your smile and looking serious. If you can't save your face, it's okay. When you turn back to Xindu Mountain, you'll find a chance to say hello to Qin Pingan privately. You can't trust Cui Dongshan. I can always trust Qin Pingan, right? It is estimated that I don't need to say anything. Qin Pingan will help you say something serious in Cui Dongshan. Cui Dongshan is lawless and dare not listen to his husband's lessons. Thank you for a little peace of mind, and sighed, I hope so. She sincerely envied Yulu and even dared to call the big white goose by name. She couldn't do it. At first I thought that Cui Dongshan served as the next sect lord, each on one continent far away, so after receiving that letter, let me thank you for all these days of fear and delay in practice, always unable to concentrate. When a group of people traveled far to Desui Mountain Cliff Academy, Yulu quickly became a golden martial artist, but after so many years, it was still an eclosion realm that covered the earth and traveled far away. No matter how great Yulu is, no matter how hard he is to win or lose, he will feel a little guilty. After all, for 30 years Yulu's martial arts realm has only risen by 1 level. Yulu's basic aptitude and martial arts talent are actually excellent. This is the sequelae of the pure martial arts shortcut, making it extremely difficult to break the bottleneck of Yulu's far travel. On the other hand, thank you. Later Cui Dongshan pulled out all the trapped dragon nails. The practice of thank you was smooth sailing. Now it is a golden elixir with loose bottleneck. One is the fallen prince of the Lu dynasty, and the other is the fairy mansion, the leader of the mountain in the Lu dynasty, and the proud daughter of heaven who has high hopes. Over the years, Yulu and Thank You, these 2 fellow villagers and classmates, seem to have been traveling together. It's hard to say that they are inseparable, but they can be regarded as getting along day and night. It's just that the 2 sides didn't give birth to any love between men and women. Thank you for asking. I acted impulsively in the past. Would I regret it? Of course I would regret it, so I didn't have the confidence to ask Qin Pingan about it. Can I not be angry if I replaced it with you? I'm just kind of forgiving and I don't like it. If you're horny or you want just regret it, you'll have to regret your intestines and you will definitely be stunned every day. Maybe he's an alcoholic now. Yulu took a sip of wine, opened a page of the book and said with a smile, it's just regrets and regrets. You still have to do what you should do. Even if you start over, it's the same choice. You will be angry and regret it. Thank you for being a survivor of a prisoner in her early years. The person she hates most is not even the Dolly woman or Cui Dongshan who took her as a maid, but the crown prince who has no pain of subjugation and can even be said to be hate. Therefore, from the ancestral house of the Yuan family in Erlang Lane, to the great Sui dynasty all the way, thank you for hating the prince who has a loose temperament and an indifferent look on the face of the sky. Until the De Sui Mountain Cliff Academy, because of Li Huai's turmoil, Yulu did not hesitate to rely on a country's remnant martial arts and some secret method to get into the Golden State, and beat the young sage out of the academy. The best choice is for Yulu to use his own ability to steadily enter the Golden State in the far-traveling realm, the 8th realm to the 9th realm, or when he sprints from the top of the mountain, when the big bottleneck of a certain day is difficult to break, he will use that share. Martial operation is a stepping stone, a ladder, and more go up one floor. Thank you for that. I have improved my impression of Lu. Although I am heartless, I still have a little responsibility and it is not useless. Just waited until Yulu was not doing business in the academy every day, just fishing by the lake and mixing well with the great Sui Prince Zhou Xian. Thank you for starting to bother him again. Today Yulu still likes fishing, but all the fish will be released on the banks of the big river, and thank you. I often meet some people in the same way. Even if he does not hold a pole, he can squat aside and watch for a long time, claiming to be fishing. People like to watch people are fishing. Yulu smiled and said, speaking of which, the foundation of the far-reaching environment that I have worked so hard for more than 10 years is not too bad. Thanks for squinting and smiling. Don't say you are safer than Chao Xichen. How about by Pei Qian? Yulu helplessly said, it's better to compare me with Qin Pingon. How many times did Pei Qian win the martial arts as the strongest in a certain realm? It's really an unimaginable thing. The weird little tired lazy guy back then really knew how to learn boxing, and it was so good. Thank you for asking for no reason. I haven't thought about finding a way to go up the mountain to practice. I heard that there is a Pushun Yunkatang in Tongyi's Hao. There is a unique secret method that can allow the martial artist to practice immortality. You can try your luck. Okay, anyway, we've been shopping around these years. After passing the entire Aquarius Island, it is enough to travel to Tongya Island. Yulu laughed dumbly, was silent for a moment and shook his head. I never thought about being a god. In the back room of the wine shop, someone lifted the green bamboo curtain gently and put it down again. Thank you for glancing diagonally. It turned out that it was a young girl standing behind the curtain, staring affectionately at someone. Yo, the action is not light. Why didn't the little girl just tore off the whole bamboo curtain so Yulu could hear it more realistically? Thank you for asking. When are you going to visit Miss Mao and Fairy Mu? The two sides met at an ancient battlefield site and a Xianxia ferry crossing, and met two extremely brilliant young women due to fate. Thank you for not being blind. I can see that the two of them fell in love with Lu at first sight. Yulu smiled and said, it's just a perfunctory polite remark. It's like getting together again when I have time. Next time we'll check out. Do you want to add 2 more dishes? Whoever listens to it is really stupid. Listening to Yulu's words is funny. Thank you for laughing. Among his classmates in previous years, Lin Shui was a wise man in the academy and once served as a gift to the Chidu temple. Even Li Huai is a wise man. Now Li Baoping, who is studying at a certain academy in Shenzhou, is already 2 gentlemen who have been tested by Zigong Jiju in person, and they are female masters who are able to preach to Confucian scholars in the academy. It's just that in the history of Haoren, there has never been a precedent for a woman to serve as the head of the 72nd Academy, or to learn from the palace. Yulu closed the book and asked, when shall we go to Jiangzhou? Today's Dilijiang's Hu is the location of thank you for the martial arts. Because the master who thanked him resolutely rejected the surrender of the Dali court, which led to the collapse of the school. Thank you for your pale face. Yulu whispered, if you don't go you can't make it. Thank you for lowering your head, biting your lip and finally shaking your head. Yulu smiled and said, then don't worry. Yulu is good at this, as if he can do anything at will. Thank you for a sigh of relief and nodding. I will definitely go. It was like a promise to Lu and it seemed to cheer myself up. Yulu gathered the sound and said, are you not curious about the letter Cui Dongshan sent me? Or have you guessed the content? Thanks for being silent. Yulu exuded a sad look, muttering to himself. Continuing the country in a foreign country, can it really be regarded as rejuvenation? Thank you for drinking all the wine in the bowl and said with a cheerful expression, forget it, why doesn't it count? When you arrive at Tongyi's house, choose a place. Doesn't matter if the site is not big. First, carefully plan for 10 or 20 years. When I enter the nascent soul realm, you will become the emperor and I will be the country. Division. Xinchu Prefecture, Huaihuang County. Li Huai led the gentleman through the street and across the alley, and found Dong Shuijing, who had arranged to meet here at an opening in a narrow and secluded alley. Dong Shuijing made a special trip back to his hometown to meet Li Huai. Li Huai joked, "It won't delay Dong Bancheng's making big money, right?" Dong Shuijing smiled and said, "You don't need to stare at the account books and you can make money if you don't plan the transaction personally." Dong Shuijing led Li Huai to his ancestral home, cooked 3 bowls of wontons and served them to the table. In the yard next to a well, a willow tree was planted. Li Huai only pretended that he hadn't seen anything, and only hated that he had only one sister. Daoist Nin saw through Dong Shuijing's realm at a glance. It is not surprising that in this old Liju cave heaven and earth realm, a young nascent infant realm, not an ascending realm, is there any fuss? It's a strange thing for my son's friend to have no ability. If you meet an old Yuanying monk who has lived for hundreds of years on the road, it is estimated that Daoist Nin will be shocked. How to practice waste. Maybe you have to ask in person, "Old boy, are you worthy of this precious place of geomantic omen in your hometown?" Dong Shuijing seemed to perceive the thoughts of the yellow-clothed old man and smiled. It's just the realm of piled-up money that made Senior Tao Ting laugh. The Daoist Nin is not surprised that the other party knows his old identity, and money can make ghosts push him. Dong Banqing in Ao Pingzhou has a rich family background that should not be underestimated. Daoist Nin smiled heartily. No matter how the state came from, the state is the state. In this vast world, who would dare to laugh at the Lu Kaishan of Ai Aizhou? Putting it on Xiaodong, the same truth. When it comes to Xiaodong, Daoist Nin sighs. I think back then he also chased a Xiaodong, who passed by 100,000 mountains. When Li Huai slapped the table, Daoist Nin shut up immediately. Dare to say something wrong. Li Huai gave a thumbs up. Well, delicious. 2 more bowls. It can be seen that Dong Shuijing often came to the ancestral house. When Li Huai had eaten another bowl of wontons, Dong Shuijing had set up a brazier, squatting on the side and simmering taro-roasted rice dumplings. Pulling off the thread and peeling the zong leaves, a zongzi in Dong Shuijing's hand was roasted into golden color. Seeing that Li Huai was hungry again, he grabbed the zongzi and gave half of it to the Taoist tender. Dong Shuijing had to peel off another zongzi and the 3 of them sat around the stove. Dong Shuijing whispered, "The husband of Croak Braids, Bian Wenmao, has just taken up the post of the academician in our state, but he has not been promoted. It is regarded as being released from outside the capital. The place is gilded, but Xuejing, a new and noble post created by the Dali court for a few years, can't be found by ordinary people. Usually he is the old official of the 6 branches of Beijing from the Imperial Academy. He is hopeless for promotion." Before returning to his hometown, His Majesty deliberately gave these civil officials a special honor. The academic politics itself has no rank, just like the Ling and Qing states on the side of the city under the jurisdiction of the capital, which are divided by an old servant of the Ministry of Industry and Hong Kong. He served as the secretary of the temple. Now Bian Wenmao's official is Guanglu Temple Qing, and his tenure expires after 4 years of studying in the prefecture. When he returns to the capital, he should serve as the Shaoqing of Guanglu Temple. It is unlikely that he will take charge of Guanglu Temple in the future. Larger, more or less to go to the 6 yamen or to go outside again to accompany the capital, tired all the way to a certain position and finally got a ranking. After the bachelor's title, there is hope that he will get a good posthumous title in the future, and even if he shares the temple, Bian Wenmao himself does not dare to think about it. Li Huai gnawed at the rice dumplings with a dazed expression. Huh. The Taoist Nin was full of emotion. Xiaodong Shushu talked about it for a long time, and his son only needs to answer one word concisely. Dong Shuijing smiled and said, "You are a sage in the academy. According to the new regulations of the Confucian Temple, you will inevitably have to deal with the Dali court in the future. These seemingly tedious and boring official affairs will be exposed sooner or later. Nowadays, the officialdom of Dai is frequently mobilized. From the capital to the local area, the post roads are busy. Only the top leaders of the states, counties in the Xinchu prefecture have almost all changed faces. Wu Yuan, serving as the provincial governor, left his post in Huaihuang County Magistrate sadly that year, and killed a proud and beautiful back carbine. And that Huang Tinghua civil servant who took office as Longzhou Governor Wei Li, now went to Dali to accompany the capital to succeed the ceremonial book. Prior to this, Chao Gingxin, the chief officer of the Kiln Affairs Supervision and Construction Office, was transferred from Longzhou supervisor to the right assistant of the Ministry of Industry of the companion capital, and then promoted to the official assistant of Dali capital, and was able to rank in the center. Yuan Jingding was promoted to the governor of Hongzhou, a neighbor in the north. Jing Quan, the new prefect of Baoshi County of Chuzhou, was once the middleman of the Qing Lizi from the Ministry of Households in the capital, and was in charge of the money bags of Hongzhou and the 3 interstates. But in fact many times Dong Shuijing, a hidden Mahist credit knife man, would envy Li Huai's kind of drifting with the crowd, or just going with the situation. Li Huai said with a guilty conscience, "I know that our classmate Xiao Yao is now serving as Dali's criminal minister. There are also former parents, Guan Lao Xianzun, Wu Yuan is now back here as the governor of Exin Chuzhou. There is another Chao Duzhao who likes to drink but doesn't like a bit of alcohol. A few years ago, it seemed that he was transferred to the bureau of the capital to become a high official?" Dong Shuijing smiled and asked, "What more?" Li Huai sighed, "It's gone." Daoist Nin began to fight against the injustice. "Why do you have to stick to these common affairs under the mountain with the government?" Li Huai shook his head, "We are different from Dali." Regardless of how his title of a sage fell from the sky and how it hit him since he became a sage, Li Huai was unwilling to do much worse than others. "When I was a child I was on the road to study in the wilderness at night. When Qin Pingan was helping to watch the wind he once said something in his heart with Li Huai, but now I can't remember it clearly." Li Huai only remembers a general idea saying that a person was a child when he was a child. "It only in the years when there is such a thing as reading. I'm not afraid that I can't remember the sage principles in those books. I'm afraid that I'm not willing to do this thing well so I don't have to go to school in the future so I can't do it easily. Good next thing. Li Huai said at the time that I was just not suitable for studying. Qin Pingan said that he is not suitable for making porcelain, learning things too slowly and always unable to keep up with his hands, but as long as he works hard he will always have a better chance to do the next thing in the future." Daoist Nin immediately changed his words and said, "The son is so humble so why not worry about it? It's not that Tao Ting is spineless, but that the old blind man is too arrogant. For example, on this trip to protect Li Huai on a long journey, the old blind man gave Tao Ting a word, and whenever my disciple was a little frightened he would break your 5 legs. Poor Nin Taoist, now I'm afraid that Li Huai will accidentally burn his mouth when drinking tea. A soaring realm is worthy of being a Taoist protector. Not to mention that there will be no one in the future, and it is destined to be unprecedented." Even so, the old blind man seemed to be worried about Li Huai. He was far away in the wild world. I don't know what ancient mystery was used. The old blind man was able to directly enter Li Huai's dream realm, and then drag Tao Ting, the ascending realm, into it casually. The Daoist Nin is like returning to the 100,000 mountains. In this night the earth shook and thundered. Li Huai got up in a dream, and ran out of the hut to take a look. One piece of golden light, dense golden armor, the puppets, clustered together. One of the golden armored puppets higher than the mountain, knelt on one knee at the foot of the mountain, slowly raised the huge head and gradually became level with the mountain, staring at Li Huai. The old blind man walked slowly to the edge of the cliff, grabbed the arm of the disciple who was grabbed halfway through his life, and together with a ghost symbol, said to Li Huai something that made Tao Ting's eyelids tremble, "They will be yours in the future." Tao Ting took a peek at Li Huai's face carefully, and there was not even the slightest spirit or lofty ambition, only fear in his eyes. "My son is good at everything, but he has no ambition to be a man. If you have the opportunity you must risk your life to speak up." It turned out that the old blind man stepped on his back, crunching and breaking again. In the end Li Huai just said, "Can I listen to Qin Pingan's suggestion first?" The old blind man unexpectedly nodded his head and agreed, and helped his disciple adjust his collar. At the same time he complimented Li Huai in an old-hearted and pleased tone, and followed his master in doing things steadily. The 2 masters and apprentices asked and answered, and heard the tender Taoist who silently put a spine on the ground. He almost didn't stare his dog eyes into the eyes of the old blind man. There was a knock on the door of the house. A visitor came to the door. In order to avoid suspicion, Li Huai had to stand up and say goodbye. Dong Shuijing smiled and said, "You don't have to go, it was made by our Jian supervisor. He wanted to make a contribution to his career. It was a pity that he couldn't do anything. In recent years he has been bumped and he has not suffered less." The new Kiln Affairs supervisor in the prefecture before he took office was very energetic. "I only felt that Chao Gingxin, a idle drunkard, could be promoted on the basis of his days. If he goes, he will be a big and small official office. Will be handled in an orderly manner. A kiln supervising and building office, openly and secretly, actually hangs 2 official plaques, so the chief official has 2 official titles at the same time. The Supervision Bureau, together with several weaving bureaus newly built in Dai, and the logging yard set up in Hangzhou for example, in fact they are all the eyes and ears of the emperor, and the secret information of the chief officials can reach the sky." As a result, when Jian Fingzhen arrived in Huaihuang County, he bumped into walls everywhere. The big names in the town had complicated relationships, intertwined roots and extremely huddled together. Taifujiang, the of water Yonghua, had a high level of landscape and a great backing. The 3 river gods of embroidery, Tongdan and Yuye near Hangzhou town like him, the Chiduan mountain Song Yuzhang, plus the city gods of the cities gods at all levels of the prefecture counties and counties. Wu Miao. Anyway, no one takes him seriously as a 4th-ranking superintendent. When he arrived, he was full of ambition and waited for half a year, but no one took the initiative to visit the superintendent at night. "If you don't look for me, I will look for you, but I didn't eat too much. Even if I got in, there was nothing on both sides. Talkable." Jian Feng had to write a letter to ask a friend in Beijing, the former local county guard, who has now been promoted to the post of Hangzhou Governor Yuan Jingding. When he was a child in Yiqi Alley, Beijing, he liked to follow the older Yuan Jingding, studying with peace of mind and not hearing things outside the window. Yuan Jingding did reply a letter, but it turned out to be a blank piece of letter paper without a word on the letter. However, after Jian Feng figured out some officialdom, he began to pinch his nose to learn from the former supervisor: watch more, listen more, talk less and go out. Fortunately, there is no limit to the number of years for the post of supervisor. It's just that it's not a problem to be so staring, so as soon as he heard that Dong Banqing had returned to his hometown, Jian Feng immediately visited him. Of course, it was a private visit by WeChat. Seeing the young man in Confucian shirts and the old man in yellow clothes, Jian Feng also said politely, "I recognize Li Huai, a native of the small town and now a wise man of Xianxia Academy." As for the kind-looking old man, he was an unfamiliar face, and there was no relevant secret file record on the superintendent's office. Before Jian Feng came, he had been recorded in the book. At the same time, he sent someone to Nujiadu to read Li Huai's office. Take the ferry and stay as usual, the customs clearance record. Dong Shuijing didn't seem to understand the rules of officialdom at all. He didn't let Li Huai and the old man leave the slightly shabby room, and he didn't even mean to move the 2 of them. If it had just been an office, Jian Feng would have felt unhappy. He would have eaten too much soft nails and closed doors, and had already polished his edges and temperament. Dong Shuijing invited Jian Duzhao to take a seat, and then handed him a zongzi. Jian Feng thanked him and he patted the dust on the zongzi and then ate it. This kind of thing does not require Jian Feng to pretend to be approachable. Although it is big, he was born in the Li family, but Jian Feng studied at Chunshan Academy for many years in his early years. During this period he made a lot of money on the road during several trips. Therefore Yuan Jingding often joked that he should work in the household department. Just because there were outsiders present today, Jian Feng had to start playing official accents as an opening remarks, chatting with Dong Shuijing about the kiln affairs. After all, now many kiln mouths are no longer official kills, and this Dong Banqing is hiding behind the scenes. Quite a few. It almost monopolized the entire wealth of the export of porcelain. Like the Baoshi kiln that had been converted into a private kiln, it was now assigned to a certain puppet merchant supported by Dong Shuijing. Dong Shuijing talked and laughed happily with him, dripping water tightly and coping appropriately. Li Huai was impressed. Jian Feng was actually mentally prepared to return without success. Before the zongzi in his hand had finished eating, he casually chatted about the preparation of the local school, and Dong Shuijing asked someone to fund it on his behalf. There are some areas that are debatable for building roads and bridges. A lot of money cannot be spent on the blade. These things are beyond the scope of the Kiln Supervision and Construction Bureau. What's more, they are trivial. Jianfeng is the superintendent. It's really boring to be an official in my eyes. I feel there are really too many details to be perfected. Since I finally met Dong Banqing today, it was just a few words of nonsense outside the officialdom. Even if it was offensive, it didn't matter. Sure enough, Dong Shuijing was very perfunctory, only to ask later when he was free. Jianfeng knew that 10% was out of play. After leaving the house, walking alone in the back alley, Jianfeng gave a wry smile, and now he is busy again. He deserves to be said secretly that he is the worst superintendent in history. Li Huai stopped talking in the room. Dong Shuijing shook his head and said with a smile, "The muffled sound that hits the wall is conscience." Li Huai asked, "Is it from the book or Qin Pin gone?" Dong Shuijing couldn't help laughing. Li Huai smiled and said, "You drop out of school early and study less. You are worse than me." Dong Shuijing hesitated, but he held back for a long time but still couldn't ask. Li Huai suddenly understood what Dong Shuijing wanted to ask. "If you just choose one of the two, I will definitely choose you as your brother-in-law." Dong Shuijing was skeptical. "I saw Lin Shui, how would you answer the same question?" Li Huai laughed. Dong Shuijing didn't break the casserole anymore and asked to the end. He just turned his head and looked at the willow tree next to the well in the courtyard, soft and weak, and the man's eyes were as gentle as the willow tree. A Qingshui Yamen under the jurisdiction of the Vehicle Driving Department of the Ministry of Defense, located in the post office of the post office in Capsule Hutong. Today came two dignitaries from officialdom who have never set foot here. One was from his own family in the Ministry of War, and the other was an official from the Ministry of Rights. Both of them had the official title of a collaborator, and they were both the most powerful Lang officers in the capital of the Dali court. The surnamed Fu Minghu, who is the head of the Good News Office, has a very promising brother named Fu Yu. He entered Beijing from the local area not long ago to report and resigned as the prefect of Baoshi County in Old Longzhou. It's flat. I just took it. One of Ren Xiaojiking's Zhan Xuan was Xiao Zhanshi, and was in charge of Sui Chunfeng. Fu Hu was respectful and scared of this cousin who had a successful career. In addition, Fu Yu was elder Fu Hu for another round, which meant that the eldest brother was the father. Today, after Fu Hu finished his official duties, he was holding a piece of mutton jade with Erlang's legs upright. When he heard the news from the concierge, he was shocked and gave him all the drinks from the Changpu River last night. "I woke up in shock and mistakenly thought that I was on an errand and made a big mistake." In the early years of the history of the Liu family, there was a case of theft of the seal box in the lobby of the Ministry of War. The involvement was widespread. The emperor was furious. Qting's sails melted, causing the entire military department of the Lu's temple to lose a lot of official hats and heads. At that time, the officialdom of the Dali Song family, which was a vassal state of the Liu family, was treated as a joke. Knowing that he was rushing to the old forest, Fu Hu paced twice in the house, stomping his feet, or preparing to break into the Dragon Lake and Tiger Den. Thinking of that old Lin, he has been conscientious over the years, working hard and resenting like an old scalper, getting along with himself, and the relationship is extremely harmonious. He has done everything he does, and he has kept himself safe and does not fight for power. Besides, I'm the top spot in the Good News Office anyway, so I have to protect my brothers in the office. Only when Fu Hu got outside Lin Zhengqing's office building and saw the two inside, he immediately lost his courage so that he didn't even notice. When he saw the two uninvited guests, he just sat on the stove. Beside on the chair, he leaned forward and stretched out his hands to keep warm, but he didn't even get up to wait for the guests. The shelf was as big as a 6-book. We must know that the two people standing in the house, the gray-haired old man, and the burly man who looked imposingly, were the doctor who sacrificed to the Qin clerk at the Libu shrine, and the doctor who chose the military department of the Ministry of War. These two official positions have always been important candidates for the national teacher Cui Yang to personally delineate, and there is no need for the Ministry of War, the Minister of Etiquette, or the Minister to review and approve. As soon as Lin Jingqing stood up, the leader, who moved abruptly after probing his head at the door, has disappeared without a trace. Lin Jingqing had to sit back in the chair and nodded with the two officials. "I understand what your Majesty meant. I will leave for Yuzhong County logging yard immediately." The old man smiled and said, "It was supposed to be the leader of the staff, Lang Chao, who came to the office to inform Mr. Lin in person, but when Lang Chao heard that he was going to see Mr. Lin, he immediately smashed his feet and was busy asking people to find plasters." Chao Gingxin has served as the supervisor of Longzhou kills for many years. Only because of his position he has the opportunity to have access to a confidential file such as Dali. In the sky of Lizhu Cave, there was an extremely hidden post status, without officials and no grades. For the Dali court, it was more important than the Kiln affairs supervisors and officials of the past dynasties. The name is the Horror, which means the gatekeeper. This talent is the true emperor's eyes and ears of the Dali court, the emperor of the Song family of Dali, or the true confidant of the national teacher Cui Yun. And the last Dali who was inserted in the Lizhu cave was Lin Shi's father, the former assistant officer of the Supervision Bureau, and now the Sesame officer of the Beijing Post News Office, Lin Jingqing. And Chao Gingxin has a bigger guess. In the days of the Lizhu cave, Lin Jingqing is very likely to retain the identity of the gangster in the capital of Lizhu. Once the young mountain lord of Luopashan broke up with the Song clan of Dali one day, the two sides were completely torn apart. This Lin Jingqing it was the last flood control dam left by the national teacher Cui Yang to Dai capital. At least it can guarantee that Qin Pingon will not go on a slaughter. Although Chao Gingxin didn't understand why a low-level middle 5 cultivator could do this step, but Chao Gingxin adheres to a purpose anyway, and people who can't afford it don't contact them at all. Seeing that the two were still stuck on the spot, the man asked, "So anxious, urging me to go on the road?" The old man laughed dumbly, was silent for a moment and shook his head and said, "Don't dare." Since there was no place to sit, the Wu Xian Silang had arms around his chest, leaning on the door, and he was hiding something from this guy. I am indeed quite curious. If it were not for this unusual official transfer, he would not have had a chance to learn about Lin Zhengcheng's what a background. In fact, he, the military officer of the Military Election Department of the Ministry of War, is leading the way for this old guy who is standing next to him. In fact, in the officialdom he has no control over Lin Jingqing, the future head of the Yuzhong County logging house. Hangzhou established a new yamen called the Logging Yard, which was only in charge of arresting those who hacked huge trees in name. Similar to the Kiln Supervision and Manufacturing Bureau in Chuzhou and the Silk Weaving Bureau in Wuzhou, the ranks of the chief officials are high and low, but they are almost the same. In Hangzhou, which borders on the north of Chuzhou, there is a famous Yuzhong County. In addition to being the ancestral home of the Queen Mother of Dali, it has been rich in towering trees since ancient times, and it is also rumored to be the place where the 12 swords and immortals witnessed the emergence of Taoism in ancient times. So Dali officialdom element, here comes the humorous saying, De Yuzhong Shao Hongzhou. Seeing that the two had no intention to leave, Lin Jingqing smiled and asked, "Otherwise, you'll be here at this good news office and set a table for the two to entertain them?" The old doctor felt helpless. Those of you locals who walked out of Lizhu Cave, except that Dong Shuijing is a little better. In addition, very few words are pleasant to your ears. The reason why staying here is an eyesore is to help your majesty, and to get a bit of unambiguous words from the man in front of you. Sounds funny. His Majesty, as the monarch of a country, can only be circumspect and ask for an exact answer from an official from the 7th grade. But it's not funny at all. What's even more exaggerated is that this man has deliberately played stupid. Lin Jingqing picked up the tongs, fiddled with the charcoal fire lightly, and said to himself, "Someone once said to me a Zen saying, the golden Buddha does not save the furnace, the wooden Buddha does not save the fire, and the clay Buddha does not save the water." The old man nodded and said, "Understood, I will go and reply to your majesty." 2 high-ranking doctors left the good news office. When he reached the hood belt alley outside the door, Mr. Wu Xian Silang asked in his heart, "What do you mean?" The old man said, "You and I don't need to understand, your majesty can do it." After hearing that the 2 lords had left their homes, Fu, who went to Lao Lin's house, hesitated and crossed the threshold. Seeing that Lao Lin was standing, he stretched out his hand and pressed twice, motioning to both of our brothers to sit down and talk, and asked cautiously, "Lao Lin, what did you chat with? Can you talk about it?" Lin Jingqing said, "I am looking for a way out for the relationship, and I will soon go to the logging yard in Yuzhong County, Hangzhou." Fu Hu asked, "Or is it the officer?" The man shook his head and said, "Number 1 in charge." Fu Hu was stunned and lowered his voice. "No, if I remember correctly, then the chief officer of the logging house, but the official body of the 6th rank. You are from the 7th rank today." Lao Lin, whose way did you find so arrogant that you can skip half a level directly? The man laughed and said, "I won't talk about this kind of thing, it's a taboo." Fu Hu laughed and patted the shoulder of the man next to him. Lao Lin, congratulations, congratulations. Seriously, if you just moved somewhere and didn't get promoted. Fu Hu laughed and patted the shoulder of the man next to him. Still the same, I'm going to scold you a few words. I have to suspect that you dislike me. Bien Duan was uncomfortable. Since I was promoted, I still skipped the ranks. I didn't say, "Thank you tonight, let me have a meal. I'll treat you." The man nodded and said, "Master Fu treats you, I will pay for it." Fu Hu slapped the man's shoulder again. "Yeah, I've missed it these years." Lao Lin turned out to be a good material for officials. After Fu Hu left, the man silently looked at the charcoal fire in the brazier and sighed softly. The sight of the tomb of the couple in Ni Ping Alley. In the past, he stole a trip to the backyard of the Yang family drugstore and found the old man Yang. He broke the rules of the court and made an exception. He was humbled and begged the old man bitterly. There is also the Shaking Mountain boxing book that went round and finally fell into someone's hands. In the other night, secretly took out some privately collected snake gallstones and threw them into the Dragon Beard River one by one, just like waiting early for a certain strawshoe boy with a basket to see and pick it up. In fact, there is only so much that can be done. Don't ask for anything, I just hope that one day I'm not an official, I'm not a so-called bullshit. That lonely child grows up to be a teenager year after year, and then he has a family and business. Then there will be Lin Jingqing when he meets him during the holidays. The other party can send from he called himself Uncle Lin from the bottom of his heart, and he should have a clear conscience and deserve this claim. In the winter of this year, the Zhoushan Jianfang of the Taihui Jianzong received an autograph invitation from the master of Luopashan, Qin Shan, inviting the master Lu Jinglong and his disciple Bai Shou to go to Tonggishao to participate in the next spring festival. Zong's celebration. Said to be the end of winter. Before the celebration, the Fengyuan ferry will travel north across the continent to Jidu, and will be anchored at the ferry near the Zhou Xian office of the Deyuan dynasty. It is troublesome that Sovereign Lu will move a little bit and board the ship to travel south without any expenses. That wasted money for the cross-continent boat trip up. By the way, I reminded Lu Jinglong in the letter. If you like, you can join hands with the ferry Lu sway from the water by the mountain to travel south to Xindu Mountain. Lu Jinglong took the invitation and Yu Jian came to Pianran Peak. The white head asked tentatively, "Lu, can we not go?" Bai Shou had just returned from a tour of Yunyan country, and brought a few juniors from other peaks and 6 younger swordsmen to practice in Yunyan country and the surrounding mountains and rivers. After all, today's white head, whether it is genealogical status or the realm of swordsmanship, is considered to be an upright elder and protector of the sect. When a group of young sword repairmen returned to the mountain safely, the Taihuijan Ancestor Masters Hall had a high evaluation of the young Jindan Peak Master of Pian Ranfing, meticulous thought, thorough work and experienced rivers and lakes. In that country of Yunyan, Bai Shou did not directly meet with 9 realms Wufu Cui Gongzhuang, the chief guest of the Suyun sect to raise Yunfeng. Now he is very honest and has changed his sex. He is about to become a great good man and restrains his disciples and grandchildren. Don't act recklessly. No, however, Cui Gongzhuang would personally clean up the door, making the martial arts reputation soaring. After a hard walk down the mountain, I never thought of going back to Pianran Peak. Bai Shou would hear such a terrible news and good news, and there will be both sorrow and joy for a time. Not long after his brother Chen's Luopashan was promoted to the sect, he kept on running and went to the southernmost Tonggishao for a second sect. Of course, it was a good thing that could not be better. But the problem is that now Bai Shou, let alone seeing the person face to face, just thinks of her, he will be embarrassed. The last time someone came to Pian Ranfing as a guest, misfortune came from the sky and he was punched and swayed on the spot. The last time it was at Pianran Peak on his own site. Someone just passed by. After a punch, the master of the dignified peak, the protagonist of the suzerain, lay on the ground and twitched as if a martial artist was walking away. Last time again it was at Luopa Mountain. 3 things. If it is true that one can eat a ditch and grow one's wisdom, then today's whiteheads can be regarded as extremely smart. Bai Shou even privately found an old deity who is proficient in numerology to help figure out whether he and that guy are at odds with each other. At that time the old was holding the horoscope of Liang Shengchen, confused, and only said that it was nothing, no one would be against anyone, and finally did not forget to say that the master of the mountain Bai Feng's horoscope is very hard. Lu Jinglong didn't bother to remind Bai Shou that according to Qin Pingon, Pei Qian didn't know his birth date at all, and even his name was fake. Pei Qian took it himself later. It's just this kind of thing Qin Pingon can tell Lu Jinglong, but Lu Jinglong shouldn't reveal the secret to Bai Shou. Lu Jinglong smiled and asked, "What do you think?" No more than a sect of Jindan opening ceremony, any next celebration in the world can be regarded as a rare event in 1,000 years. In accordance with the customary rules on the mountain, as long as it is not the kind of hostile sect that forges dead enemies, within a continent, even if people are not present, a gift will be given as usual. After all, in Ezhou there is an extra sect head immortal family out of thin air. How can it be a matter of giving a face to Ezhou cultivators? The number of martial arts in a continent is straightforward. You can just look at the number of martial arts in the end. In the same way, the depth of the history of a continent often depends on the number of sections. So just like the Phi Ma sect in Skeleton Beach, Beiju Luzhou no longer waited to see this outsider. But when the Phi Ma sect really gained a foothold and officially held the celebration, most of the immortal powers still had to pinch their noses and give them away. Go for a gift, only it's just that the gift is not heavy and some of them deliberately just gave away a few snowflakes. The rules are the same, courtesy is light and affection is heavy. Phi Ma Zong thinks that there is little money, it is that they are not generous. Just waited until the real fire dragon on Litafeng made an exceptional appearance, came to Maishan and participated in the celebration. The old real man would rarely give a gift of magic treasure. Some immortal mansions with forgetfulness immediately added a belated gift to them. The old real people who are known for their two-sleeved breeze have paid out for an unprecedented time, and there is no reason for others not to spend money or give gifts. Otherwise, it is easy to be missed by the old real people. Bai Shou still didn't give up, saying, "Just send the gift. Qin Pingon will definitely not mind it. If it doesn't work, I won't go. When you see Qin Pingon, when you look back, you will say that I will retreat soon." Lu Jinglong smiled and said, "As long as you don't take the initiative to provoke Pei Qian, she will not compete with you for no reason." Seeing the white head still hesitating, Lu Jinglong didn't want to embarrass the disciple and said empathetically, "If you really don't want to go, just practice your sword at Pianran Peak. I will help explain Qin Pingon on the other side of Qin Pingon." In addition to the post, Qin Pingon also sent a secret letter to Lu Jinglong. In the letter, there was a female formation master named Han Zhoujin in the capital city of Dali. A member of the earthly branch monks, there is also a hidden identity. He is the guest of the Yan family in Dali Zizhou. Han Zhoujin has a blessing from the Xianfu ruins. It has a long history and her Fulua accomplishments are quite good, so let Lu Jinglong was on his way to the south, so he stopped at Dai capital for a while to help. Give Han Zhoujin some pointers. Bai Shou gritted his teeth. Go. Anyway, I haven't been to Tongyi's house. Lu Jinglong smiled and nodded. The patriarch sighed, hinting at me is to ask you, the peak master, when I plan to accept disciples, so that I can open up branches and leaves for this Pianran Peak. In fact, there was a bigger hint at the Patriarch Hall of Taihuijan Swordsmen, and it was to ask the sect master whether he would like to be a Taoist companion. The white head was stunned for a long time, only to feel that he had heard a big joke and grinned. Accepting disciples? Just me? Although I have been going up the mountain with the surname Lu for some years, but the white head always has the feeling that I have just started to practice swords and I will be asked by someone to fall to the ground at any time. Therefore there is no earth fairy monk who can collect the inheritance. Consciousness. In fact, every Kaifeng Dixian on the mountain itself is equivalent to carve out a brand new Dharma lineage for Zhu Xian. Bai Shou waved his hand. Don't rush. Above the peak there was a lone person, no disciples, and made a joke, but Lu Jinglong watched the joke alone. If he accepts an apprentice, do I still need the dignity of the teacher? Now that the realm is not enough, there hasn't been a victory in questioning the sword. Is it possible for the disciple in the door to shout, "Master was beaten into a coma," or, "The big thing is not good, Master is lying on the ground again"? Bai Shou thought of something and asked, "What's going on with Xianzong?" Lu Jinglong said, "Yang Yanfeng will take the initiative to conclude an alliance with us soon. There are now more than a dozen mountain forces allied with Taihui Jianzong, except for Chuanlu Garden, Kaik Mansion, and Yunshang on the southeast boundary of a continent. City as well as several time-honored fairy houses including the Thunder God's house on the west coast, among them the Thunder God's house in Baby Mountain. A few years ago I suffered a dumb sap, and even the golden plaque at the gate of the mountain was deducted from the word God House, and finally caught the two foreign gangsters who seemed to have their brains caught by the door panel. Put it again. Of course, Lu Jinglong and Taihui Jianzong did not have the idea of being the leader of the mountain. This kind of relatively loose agreement is more convenient for business exchanges between each other. It can only be said that it is similar to the relationship of marriage in the mountain. Bai Shou smiled and said, "Then Taihui Jianzong has one more pawn?" Lu Jinglong frowned slightly. The white head immediately raised his hands and took the initiative to admit his mistake. "Just as if I had fart." Lu Jinglong reminded softly, "It is necessary to know that the verbal mistakes of our sword repairers are tantamount to a question of swords in people's hearts. Whether it is a monk or a vulgar son, in everyone's heart lake, there will be heavy stones at the bottom of the water, and every stone may be an unintentional statement by many others on the road of life." Bai Shou hummed, "I will pay attention to it later." The young Jianxiu grinned, "Don't worry, in Pian Ranfing Mountain, apart from talking to myself, I don't have much chance to speak. As for the mountain, I don't speak much." In fact, in Lu Jinglong's view, one of the most mysterious formations in the world is the Lizhu cave sky that has been suspended in the air above the northern part of Aquarius for many years. There are generally two types of monks' world. One is that the three religions' sages sit in academies, Taoist temples and temples. They can raise one realm, and even the Yuanying realm can directly cross the sky and become a monk in the Yupu realm. Let Zhou Xian become a kind of impossible place with thin spiritual energy, occupying the right time and place, and the foreign monks, because they can't mobilize the slightest aura of heaven and earth, so every time a magic trick is shot, every time a magic weapon is sacrificed, it will consume its own aura, and the more powerful it is, big is like opening a mouth, and this spiritual flow will feed back to Zhou Xian, like a kind of tribute offering. The hostile two sides will lose and grow unless the realm is very different. There will be no suspense of winning or losing. In addition, the great monk relied on the formation to build a small world, which was very confused. In the early days of the Lizhu cave, not only did both the foreign monks involved in it also followed some more mysterious avenue rules, so this time Lu Jinglong planned to attend the next ceremony, except for going to Dali capital to find Nahun. "Zhoujin, I have to go to the old Longzhou boundary in Dai again to see if we can use the stones from other mountains to attack jade without violating the laws and regulations of Dai. To be precise, it is the jade from other mountains. Can grind stones." Regarding this matter, Lu Jinglong mentioned it to Qin Pingon, who was a guest of his own sect last time. Therefore, in the secret letter sent by Qin Pingon this time, he told Lu Jinglong straightforwardly that he should concentrate on studying the remaining rhyme of the formation, because he had already talked to him. Li Court said hello up. Lu Jinglong suddenly received a letter from Feijian. Lu Jiqing from Jingwu Palace. The white head asked curiously, "What's wrong?" Lu Jianxian asked someone to ask Jian together. "Ask who?" Bai Shou drew out a yellow calendar from his sleeve and opened it with a thunder and opened it. "In 3 days it's a good day." Beiju Luzhou's old almanac is probably the only one in the entire Haoran world. In a year there are so many days, Yai Wenjian. Sword of Coming Chapter 909. Above the sea, not long after the sword ferry dragged the moon together, a mountain ferry hovered in the air, and there were 2 large sword boats escorted nearby. Is huge, covering the sky and sun, just drifting over Osmanthus Island. All Xianxia ferry boats that can travel across continents in Beipingzu have long been requisitioned and seconded by the Confucian Temple and the Dai Court. The Osmanthus Island belonging to the Fan clan of Lialongqing is no exception. However, not long after the Confucian Temple discussions ended, the old Longqing Ying's family leased a new ferry boat with Iazhao and Luxiazu to maintain trade routes. This kind of thing, although it is suspected of opportunism, is allowed by the Zhongtu Confucian Temple, and it is not prohibited. This makes the few Zongzi Xinjia who can build the cross-continent ferry by themselves, earning a lot of money. On Osmanthus Island, there is a private house called Gui Mai Xiaoyuan. Mrs. Gui rubbed her eyebrows. She was really annoyed by that ferry chase recently. Jin Su held back his laugh, which was harder. It turned out to be the previous reunion at the Middle-earth Confucian Temple. Xianxia said some heart-wrenching remarks. Mrs. Gui, seeing him sincerely, gave in a little bit and said a kind word so that he could go to Osmanthus Island to sit occasionally. At that time she had her own considerations. As Nanyue Dacian monarch Fan Junmao fell all the way from Yupu stage to Longmen stage. Therefore the Fan family urgently needed an enshrinement from the upper 5 realms, and the one who escorted the intercontinental ferry safely past Jiaolong for many years. The old boat of Go happened to be a disciple of Xianxia, and Mrs. Gui hoped that Xianxia could give more guidance to his disciples in their cultivation. But Mrs. Gui never expected that what she called, occasionally, was totally different from what Xianxia thought of occasionally. In her expectation she received an apology letter written by the young hermit. At first Mrs. Gui felt that Qin Pingon was too worried, but now she began to feel that if Qin Pingon dared to come to Osmanthus Island, she would dare to drive people directly. The small courtyard knocked on the door no more no less just 3 times. Mrs. Gui frowned slightly. She didn't even notice someone approaching the courtyard gate. Jinsu was about to get up and open the door. Mrs. Gui waved her hand to let the disciple stay where she was. She waved her sleeve again and opened the courtyard door. A young Taoist priest stood at the door with a bright smile, and waved to the 2 masters and apprentices in the courtyard. This Fan family fairy did not accept guests who boarded halfway. Jinsu glanced at the young Taoist crown, which was a lotus crown, and she was regarded as a traveling Taoist priest from the gods. Only the Taoist priests of the gods who wear the Taoist crown on their heads will have both a fishtail crown and a lotus crown. It is reasonable to say that Hohhot Island followed the road to the market this time and returned from the wild world to Aquarius Island. There were no passengers on the island, let alone Taoist priests. Miss Gui was silent. She just said a blessing when she got up. Jinsu quickly followed the master to get up. The young Taoist priest hurriedly bends over to pay the courtesy and sighs after standing up. Fortunately, Mrs. Gui's appearance remains unchanged for thousands of years, making people forget the vulgarity. Mrs. Gui smiled without saying a word. The young Taoist priest swaggered into the yard. This is the girl Jinsu. It is a match made in heaven for son Jiashu to marry the girl Jinsu. The golden osmanthus tree in Aquarius Island was regarded as the orthodox moon palace species by many monks on the mountain in later generations. It was this Taoist priest who went on a boat trip in the early years and encountered Osmanthus Island on the way. Traveling ashore in Zhou, passing by Jingui Temple, a handmade ferryman handwriting, and Wangpa selling melons and boasting. Xian is really idle. It's just that Mrs. Gui didn't think of anything. Lu Chen went to the Qingming world. At the beginning he really had a little disciple of the Taoist ancestor by Yujing, the 3rd head teacher. In fact, during that journey, Lu Chen also met the then Lord of the Gods and gave some advice to a Taoist boy who had just gone up the mountain to practice. And that little Taoist boy whose surname is Qi is Shen. Jinsu naturally failed to recognize the identity of the young Taoist master. Even if the other party had identified her identity, she probably wouldn't believe it. Before the young Taoist took a seat, he looked around and asked with a smile, "It's not a coincidence, old Gu is not on the ferry?" It turned out that it was Lu Chen who had left the Great Wall of Jianqi. He did not rush to return to the Qingming world, but strictly followed the agreement with Lord Hermit, and must take a trip to Xianxia Mountain in Aquarius. And by Yujing's 3 masters' wind speed is so fast it is simply, the tortoise crawls. Miss Gui reluctantly said, "Why should Master Lu ask knowingly? Isn't it because he is not here that you, by Yujing the 3rd head teacher, are willing to show up?" After Lu settled down he tapped his finger on the tabletop. The meaning was obvious. What about the wine? Jinsu asked Master with his own heart, whether he should take out a few jars of sweet-scented osmanthus to treat the guests. Of course Mrs. Gui did not agree. She did not want to have too much overlap between Hohhot Island and the 3 Palms. The fairy chase, Gu Qingsong, who is famous in the entire awe-inspiring world, was it not Lu Chen who brought it to Osmanthus Island back then? Looking at the mountains upstairs, the snow on the top of the hill, the moon in the snow, and the beauty under the moon are all different situations. Lu Shen's 5 fingers tapped on the stone table in turn and said to himself, 15 is a stunner in astronomy, Lu Qizhi is a stunner in the text, and Osmanthus Island is a stunner in the landscape. Ms. Gui reminded, "Teacher Lu, if you have something to say, I want to see you off if it's okay." Lu Shen laughed and said, "Whoever is poor is not poor, Mrs. Gui, forgive me." Jinsu was puzzled. Master called this Taoist priest Lu Zhangjiao? Mountain Immortal Mansion, but there is no such thing as a sect leader. Even if it is the founder of the mountain, at most it is the suzerain, the leader of the mountain, etc. After all, who can do it, who dares to do it? The Jianghu sect under the mountain does not lack the suffix of the word. But it is the leader, and there is no saying that it is a master. Unless it is the 3 by Yujing who are far away and out of reach, of course. They are now the 4 descendants of Taoist ancestors, They are eligible to be honored as a certain master teacher. Could it be that the young Taoist priest in front of you who is scornful, is that? How could it be possible? I must have thought too much. A Baiyujing teacher how high above the sky, would knock on the door, enter the courtyard, sit here peacefully without saying anything, and even cheekily ask the master for a drink. For Jin Su, the only time in his life that he barely got in touch with Lu Chen was when Chen Pingon had personally painted a horrifying talisman in the Battle of Jialonggu. What do you do? Lu Chenji ordered. Lu Chen raised his head to look at the sky and sighed for no reason. Hu Zuershan, Hu Zuirian. Literally, it describes the beauty of a woman's appearance and dress as a god. Mrs. Gui looked solemn. Lu Chen looked at Mrs. Gui blankly but smiled suddenly. Just kidding, you can't take it seriously. Ms. Gui said indifferently, why tell the joke if you are not serious? Lu Chen's little chicken pecked at the rice, nodded and said yes. After eating, hanging at Mrs. Gui's side, he turned his head to look at the suspicious Jin Su and exclaimed, good name, Jin Suxing Kangfushi, Siqinggao Guqiang. The old dragon city is really drenched in the Sun family's light. Jin Su cautiously said, Mr. Lu, my father's surname is Jin, so the master gave me this name. It's just another name for osmanthus, which has the same meaning as that of osmanthus and Guanghanxian. Lu Xun had a sincere expression, thirsty for knowledge, and asked, what's the solution? Jin Su smiled and said, just because the sweet-scented osmanthus is yellow like gold and the flowers are as small as millets, this is the alias. Lu Xun once again stroked his palm and said in admiration, I have learned, the world has no boundaries and I really live to learn. Mrs. Gui couldn't stand the nonsense of Master Lu and said directly to her disciples, this Master Lu is the Baiyujing Lu Xun of the Qingming world. How would he know that Jin Su is an osmanthus alias? Jin Su was shocked and quickly got up, gave a blessing and said with a trembled, Osmanthus Island Jin Su, I have seen Master Lu. Lu Xun rolled his eyes. This is boring. Reading an unseen book is like meeting good friends. Seeing books that have been read is like meeting old friends. Mrs. Gui's move was a terrible sight, just like helping girl Jin Su, turning to the last page of a book about talents and beautiful ladies that she had just read. Lu Chen lifted a palm, shook it lightly and said with a smile, Lady Jin Su will have to change her temper of looking at people in the future, or she will only let Jin Su slip away. Many of them could have been held firmly in the palm of the hand. Of course, if the son is not a godfather, the teaching is not strict. Naturally, the teacher is lazy. In addition to the inheritance of the magic technique, Mrs. Gui will also carefully carve the jade on the matter of the disciples' Taoism. If it is said that the world is like this, I am just following the crowd, am I sure to be right? Surely it must be good? Pang Dao does not seem to be necessary. Just to say that here is the real gain and loss, who dares to make a conclusion. Can't be that Jin Su and the people of the world are right but the poor way is wrong? Lu Qinshu babbled, stood up, his figure disappeared in a flash and left Osmanthus Island. Only a book of Taoism made of gold and jade was left on the table, glowing with purple and green spirit. After shrinking one step across the sea, Lu Chen stopped abruptly, staggering forward, almost fell a dog to eat shit, raised his hand to support the crown of the road, stood on his toes, craned his neck and glanced down at the mountain and river, almost walked the wrong door. It turned out that the Confucian temple only gave Lu Zhangjiao the share of landing on 2 continents, and then he was about to send out by Yujing's 3-head teaching ceremony. However, when Lu Chen returned to the world of Haoren next time, there would be no such restrictions. After all, a Yaoguang blessed land was sent out and there was someone who did the real credit. Lu Chen stood on the sea of clouds at the border of the sea and land under his feet, and hit a flyover-style boxing road. The 2 crackling sleeves of the Taoist robe could barely be regarded as the flowing water. Suddenly a golden rooster was independent, pinched and full of nonsense. After a spell of Daoju, he came to the sky over the old dragon city of Aquarius Island in an instant, but unfortunately the sea of clouds that was created by his own hands in the past is gone. A sideways volley rolls, and when his feet fall, Lu Chen has already arrived. At the boundary of Xianxia mountain he bent his fingers and tapped the crown of the crown on his head lightly, casting a blind eye. Lu Xun neither went to find the contemporary female ancestor of Xianxia mountain, nor did he go to Weifeng to find Kai Jinjian, and he was not in a hurry to buy or sell. Lu Chen glanced at the scenic Xianxia peaks and finally fell on the side of Ganyun Peak. In the vast sea of clouds, A mountain top suddenly appeared like an isolated island on the sea, and there was a man wearing that old tulwan robe. The immortal man, sitting on the white jade railing and drinking alone, stared blankly at somewhere, unable to shift his eyes for a long time. The bachelor man drank and drank instead of drinking the woman's brows and words. Huang Zhongho frowned, and another visitor who didn't follow the rules to walk through the gate? Really, Xianxia Mountain is a place where anyone can come and walk? Last time I was a Qingshan guest who claimed to be Chen Pingon in the Luopa Mountain. This time he was replaced by a Taoist priest who did not know his roots and feet. It turned out that in Huang Zhonghao's field of vision, there was a young Taoist priest who could not see the Dao lineage. Above the sea of clouds he bypassed Gingyun Peak and swept away. It was not the straight line of imperial wind but a big step. The kind of moving forward and dangling sleeves, but at the same time as Yufeng did not forget to look at the left and right, it seemed that the eyebrows and the eyes were not intent. Huang Zhongho stood up, put away his hip flask, and performed a unique secret technique of cultivating Yunfeng. His figure was instantly submerged in a sea of white clouds like a cloud, and he quietly followed. Only listen to the young-looking Taoist priest from the outside country and he has a lot of words, and it is my generation to form a golden alchemy. What kind of haze, a golden pill, azure moon and white high mountains and fast winds, unlimited clouds and water. Then I saw that Taoist priest reached a mountain called Fufeng, and started climbing up the cliff from the middle of the mountain. He lifted his body lightly but he was a little bit airy, his posture was as strong as an ape in a mountain. Huang Zhongho has always been in hiding to see what this sneaky guy wants to do. The young Taoist seems to be a natural stubbornness. When there is no one around here he also likes to talk to himself. He stretched out his hand to grab a lily vine. The Taoist leaned against the cliff, shook the sleeve of the Taoist robe and shook out a big pie. He stretched out his hand to catch it, chewed it and said vaguely, "The clouds are misty with a few peaks and the green hills are piled up with green buns, lush and lush. Good poetry and poetry taking advantage of the prosperous poetry. The talent is like a spring, the momentum is unstoppable. Come again. I once talked to the fairy monarch. My mountain ancient spiritual soil higher than Shimi Mountain. The cave house hangs from the sun and the moon. Thousands of miles of clouds and water wash my eyes. I can only climb the danger without help. Dare to ask the guest officials, why is this?" I was shocked. Tang Mu. It turned out that he was wearing a true figure of the 5 mountains. Huang Zhongho, who heard it in the dark, had a headache. There has always been no Fuyifeng where the monks of Xianxia Mountain lived and cultivated the way. It was a secret forbidden area. Even the ancestors of the Ancestor Temple do not know the historical origin of this peak. They only know that Dixian chose the top of the mountain as the open peak dojo, and this peak will never be selected. The crux of Xianxia Mountain's current embarrassing situation happened to be on this mountain. It is rumored that the founder of Xianxia Mountain before the establishment of the mountain in Ao Pingzhou found the ancient water control amulet and the undead prescription. Therefore, in the secret fairyland of Fu Temple Peak, there is the Yinfang Stone Room in Baijizichuan, which is Xianxia Mountain. The origin of aura. Near the top of the mountain, there is an ancient Xianfu site with many obstacles to the mountains and rivers. There are 2 round stones at the door, natural stone drum-shaped, and the monks buckle it when the monks buckle. The seals are engraved with Shenzhen and Yunzhen. Huang Zhongho was vigilant because the Taoist priest came here by coincidence. Lu Chen looked at the stone drum at the door, sighed, and the seal was still fresh, but the old things of the gods and the immortal family's relics were gone. Farewell to the old and welcome the new year at the foot of the mountain, which is the new year, while the farewell to the old and welcome the new on the mountain is the heart. I forgot who said it. Probably the poor self. Lu Chen turned his head and smiled. Father of the Taoist cultivation Yunfeng, sneakily following the poor road all the way, in this place where the earth should not be called every day, is the Taoist intending to rob money? Huang Zhongho appeared in figure and said, "This fellow Taoist, why don't you let me go to Yunxiazu Mountain and see my master?" Yunxia Mountain Zhonglu Wei Li is the preacher of Huang Zhongho. Lu Shen waved his hand. "Forget it, your ancestor Yunxia is not on the mountain now, so the poor people can reminisce for no reason." Huang Zhongho choked for a while. Yunxia Old Immortal is the originator of Yunxia Mountain. Naturally, he has long since passed away. Through the opening of branches and leaves, several direct disciples have achieved the good situation of the 16 peaks of Yunxia in Aquarius. And the reason why Yunxia Mountain is close to the Dharma involves a long history of insider, because it is said that the old ancestor Xianxia was actually born in the Xiankong temple in China, but he was not a monk but a certain kind of magic. Lu Chen's Wuxia shook hands and poked lightly in the shape of a stick, smiled and said, Mu Shangzhua, isn't it? Huang Zhongho didn't understand whether this Taoist priest was playing mystery, or whether it was true. Lu Chen tut. Looking at the confusion of your second monk Zhang Er's head, it doesn't seem to be a fake. It seems that the old friend Xianxia, who is poor, was embarrassed to leak her roots and feet with a few pros. In fact, what is there? It's hard to tell. It should be in the preface above your Xianxia mountain patriarch's genealogy. Before Xianxia's ancestor left Xiankong Temple, Lu Chen had never taken a boat out to sea and had met with the monk Quangran. Taoism and Buddhism, each said his own words, but in Lu Chen's words, the Taoist real person does not demean the Buddha. The Buddha's dragon elephant also knows a talk, 2 cups of tea and a happy conversation. The true body of the ancestor Xianxia was the walking stick in the hands of the abbot of Xiankong Temple in her early years. Knowledge, the monk held the wooden seat, and once lightly tapped Lu Chen on the shoulder. Lu Chen didn't evade, he gave the Mu Shangzhua, a fate for enlightenment in vain. Then there was the Buddhism case of Howren's future generations who beat Lu Chen out with one stick. Lu Chen raised his hand and made a gesture of raising his head and drinking. Huang Zhongho hesitated, but threw a pot of Chuankuan wine secretly brewed from Yunxia Mountain. Lu Chen lifted the mud seal, sniffed, his face was intoxicated and he squinted and smiled. It's a good drink. Huang Zhongho said, after drinking I still have to bother the real person to visit the patriarch's hall. The outsider who trespassed at the mountain gate last time, he really went to find Kai Jinjian of Weifeng, and Huang Zhongho didn't let him be reluctant. Lu Chen nodded. That's right, Pang Dao really wants to talk to your mountain master and uncle about something business. Someone will help lead the way lest Pang Dao hits like a headless fly. Huang Zhongho said, I hope that the real person will do what he says so as not to hurt his peace. Lu Chen smiled and said, pointing to the mansion gate, and asked, this is the most suitable place for feng shui to be used as a dojo. It's a pity that the gate has been kept closed all the time. Huang Zhongho explained, the door closed by the second-generation patriarch, the mountain master himself, also passed a decree before his death. In the future, if we monks of Yunxia Mountain, if no one is in the 5 realms, we will not be allowed to open this door and no one will be allowed to enter. Practice in the secret mansion. This matter is not a teacher. The secrets of the door are known to all monks in the whole continent. Many mountain forces who have a wrong relationship with Yunxia Mountain like to make fun of Yunxia Mountain with this matter. They ridiculed and deliberately said that there is a fairy-like town in the mansion. Jibao, as soon as you open the door you will be invincible. Punching and kicking the gods are not a problem. Hearing this, Lu Chen was choked by the wine, wiped the corners of his mouth with his sleeves and said with a smile, it's really a master who pits his master and his grandchildren. It's a good intention. It's hard work. It is nothing but hope that you younger monks can continue to work hard, practice well no matter how. You should cultivate a jade puddle. When the door is opened and occupy this mansion with great concentration, you may be able to create more immortals along the way. Huang Zhongho was silent. Lu pondered for a moment, holding the pot in one hand and pinching the trick with the other. Since the person who needs to tie the bell to untie the bell, then the person who closes the door is necessary to open the door. Huang Zhongho shook his head and said, after the ancestor master soldier was disbanded, he did find the reincarnated person outside the mountain, but unfortunately the ancestor master was still unable to open his body. He stopped at the Dragon Gate realm and he was relieved again. There will be no news after that. Lu Chen nodded and stopped deducing the way in way out of the second-generation ancestor of Yunxia Mountain. He shook his hand and said, the mud cow enters the sea, how can I find it? The most fear of monasticism is that there is no way out and it is best to have a way to be a man. There are some old sayings that have been passed on from mouth to mouth. It is of course reasonable to be older than the elderly. For example, if one's ancestors accumulate virtue they can benefit their descendants. Huang Zhongho began to believe that the young Taoist in front of him was probably an extraordinary man with profound Taoism and a great connection with Yunxia Mountain. Lu Chen turned and looked at the surging sea of clouds at Gung Yunfeng, drank the wine silently. He was full of poems and songs and he had accumulated too much. For a moment he didn't know which passages and sentences to turn out, and he shook his arms around the Daoist friend next to him. Long experience. Huang Zhonghe mistakenly thought that this foreign minister who had a good face and returned to the original, was returning to his old home sadly and not seeing his acquaintance. Lu Chen threw the empty hip flask away from the cliff and raised his hand again. Huang Zhonghe was also looking at the magnificent sea of clouds over the mountains by his farming cloud peak. Hearing the Tao Chong coughing several times, he realized that the other party kept that lift. With the hand gesture, Huang Zhonghe had to toss another pot of Chuankuan wine. Didn't he really meet a liar who was drinking? Lu Xian said, many people don't drink just because they don't like to drink. Many people don't drink because they can't drink. Huang Zhonghe nodded in agreement. The previous tragic battle that caused the mountains and rivers of the continent to sink. So many people who did not drink began to drink. And it also made more people who liked to drink stop drinking. Lu Chen nodded and shook the jug in his hand. He was indeed a good drinker. Sir Hidden Officer has a picking eye which has always been good. It's not a waste of money to walk through Xianxia Mountain after untold hardships. Huang Zhonghe carefully brewed his words and asked, really people visit this place to solve our problems and solve problems in Xianxia Mountain? Lu Chen nodded and said, of course, poor Dao has an old relationship with Xianxia Mountain. Poor Dao is a famous nostalgia on the mountain. Secondly, someone asked poor Dao to get out of the mountain to help Xianxia Mountain tide over the difficulties. I have to come. Huang Zhonghe asked tentatively, if this is the case, why doesn't the real person go directly to our mountain lord? Lu Xian chuckled, a worldly expert with a state of impoverished Dao that towers above the clouds, with a turquoise temperament and a pale heart, how can he do things with common sense? Already regarded the other party as a land fairy in the game world. But when the other party said so, Huang Zhonghe was a little bit confused. Lu Chen felt that the fire was almost over, so he picked up the hip flask and randomly clicked on the mansion door behind him. With a word, it was a leak of the secret for Huang Zhonghe. This mansion for Xianxia Mountain is actually a guard and steal. As long as you open the door, Xianxia Mountain will not only solve your worries, but also get a rich inheritance gift year after year of accumulation of luck. This opening, Huang Zhonghe, imagine yourself, you have to be what, a lot of luck? The only thing Xianxia Mountain has to do next is to lay a large formation to take good care of this abundant aura that bursts like a flood. Otherwise it will be instantly stunned by the tide of the aura. What a big joke. Huang Zhonghe looked unbelievable. Can't believe it. Is it really so simple? According to the previous avenues of my own patriarch hall, to solve this huge dilemma, it is nothing more than to start from 3 aspects, at least 2 of them. First, a monk of the upper 5 realms is needed, which is why the Mountain Lord has been in retreat in recent years, seeking a way to break the bottleneck. Secondly, Xianxia Mountain can become a sect, and it can be approved by the Confucian Temple, which can give more luck. Although it still treats the symptoms and not the root cause, it can delay the deterioration of the situation. Finally, we need a heavy treasure of at least a semi-fairy rank, which can gather and stabilize the aura of heaven and earth. Humanity, time, and location. If the 3 can be combined, of course it is the best, but from the current point of view, Xianxia Mountain is doomed to achieve nothing in the short term. Just to say that after a great war, the half-Xian soldiers are now almost selling at the sky-high price that was once equal to the Immortal soldiers, especially the Jinshan treasures other than this type of offensive. The relative price was low in the past, but now it is even more expensive in Hauran. Rare and precious. Xianxia Mountain went around to ask about the relationship, went to other continents to inquire about this, but ended up hitting a wall everywhere, almost always the same answer: there is no sale. This is also the reason why Xianxia has not been able to make a move for a long time. Otherwise, it is possible to buy a half-celestial soldier by smashing the pot and selling the iron to collect money and borrow money. Lu Chen smiled and said, someone actually passed that Kai Jinjian a long time ago and reminded you of the way to break the game in Xianxia Mountain, but Kai Jinjian was kept in the dark and probably heard some hints, but she never understood it, you guys. The spectators were also unaware of what they were doing, so they couldn't get in. They ended up sitting on Jinshan Inshan but almost starved to death. It's not that the person deliberately watched your jokes, but your Xianxia Mountain's Taoism is fundamental. It's close to Zen, and of course he can't do it too much. Otherwise it's just superfluous, which is equal to unbuckling and buckling, procrastinating and paying off debts, but it's not beautiful. Huang Zhonghe Zui said, I implore the real person to speak clearly. He still didn't believe that opening a door on this Fufeng would make the entire Xianxia Mountain worry-free. Furthermore, the monk's violation of the ancestral precepts is not a trivial matter on the mountain. Lu Xian sighed, this Huang Daoyu has a cheerful temperament, and he will give him wine when he asks for it, and he will give 2 pots as soon as he asks for it. Unfortunately, this mind is a bit bewildered by the drinking. Lu Xian had to patiently explain, Kai Jinjian didn't have a deep blessing in his early years. Didn't he get an expert saying that break and stand like the help of the gods? What is broken? Who is God talking about? It's nothing more than the simplest break-in. The person who is like the help of the gods is of course Mr. Qi, the Confucian sage of Lizhu Dongtian. The reason why he said this idiom in his early years is who he can be if it is not Zhou Zi. The puzzle and the answer are given. Do you still expect Zhou Zi to hold your head and speak loudly in your ears? Huang Zhonghe always bends down while listening to the man's words. Wait until the Taoist stopped speaking. Huang Zhonghe straightened up this time, took a deep breath, made up his mind and went back to talk to the mountain lord about the matter. The mountain chief did not dare to open the door. He came. In the dark, Huang Zhonghe believes that this Taoist's words are not jokes, nor is it a sinister act to harm Xianxia mountain. Even if both the mountain lord and the master are opposed, Huang Zhonghe will only look for a lucky day, bathe and change clothes, go to the ancestor hall to worship the incense, make an oath of the heart and frankly confess the matter with the ancestors of the past. If it is wrong, just ask for any consequences. Let me Huang Zhonghe be able to bear it alone. Lu Xian nodded and started boasting again, I am a good alcoholic. No wonder that half of the poor students who are not named want to have another drink with you. Huang Zhonghe smiled and said, even so, the younger generation is grateful to the real person, but the rules are there. You still need to ask a real person to visit the patriarch hall. Lu Xian tut and said, good boy, the monkey is good, you must have a good road, and the poor way will put the words here today, 1 spit and 1 nail. Huang Zhonghe inevitably feels a little guilty. This real person treats each other so frankly, but he wants to treat the gentleman's belly with a villain, and asks the mountain lord to personally check the identity of the other party, seeking a so-called foolproof. Lu Xian wanted to caress his beard and laughed. Oh, he remembered that he was young and didn't have a beard. After all, he was not as old as Dao Chang's son in the great profound capital, so he rubbed his chin. Pan Dao is a real gentleman, a real man. Be careful, gentleman generous. Huang Zhonghe was speechless. Lu Xian lightly stomped his feet and smiled. Don't think it is a trivial thing to build a mountain protection array that prevents the surging of spiritual energy from escaping. Once the palace gate is opened, the momentum is not small, it is mighty, and it is equivalent to a big sword. The Immortal asked Jian Yunxia mountain indiscriminately, and if he was careless the entire Fu Temple peak would be broken on the spot, but it was equal to the second questioning sword. The rocks were splashing, the flying sword was like rain, and the remaining Yunxia mountain 15 peaks, and finally I can leave a few hills suitable for cultivation and I can count on the poor road. Well, it's not bad, but most of it can be left. It is the aura accumulated in the cave for many years. 7 or 8 out of 10 you must make wedding clothes for others. Yes, it is estimated that within a few years, within a 10,000-mile radius of Yunxia mountain large and small, near the top of Xianxia mountain, and the Huangliang country with a yellow beam next to it, you will sincerely send you something similar to the unselfishness of justice. Golden plaque, let's talk to express our thanks. Huang Zhonghe heard of this, but he was relieved. Otherwise it was like a beautiful dream of yellow beams, which made him unable to believe it was true. Then the question is coming, what's the answer to this matter? Lu Xian asked and answered, throwing out the empty jug in his hand and stomped again, it's in your Huang Zonghao's 2 jugs of wine. If Huang Zhonghe only gave a pot of wine, Yunxia mountain would not have this treatment. The hip flask that was thrown into the air and the hip flask that had already fallen to the ground hung the sky, and one on the ground, followed by Lu Xian stomping his feet. In an instant the Yunxia mountain boundary was surging, and I saw the 2 hip flasks suddenly. It is as large as a mountain, as if there is a universe in the pot, each with a Dao Qi ups and downs, and finally a yin and yang fish pattern is condensed, slowly circling, just covering the entire Yunxia mountain, and the array is falling to the ground one after another. Like a painting of ink, the long scroll spreads on the ground and then disappears without a trace. This vision of heaven and earth swallowing mountains and rivers is fleeting. In a Yunxia mountain, apart from Huang Zonghao's witnessing this magnificent sight, there are only 2 people who can perceive the strangeness. One is the green juniper peak Kai Jinjian, and the other is a young child who is staring at the sky, and neither of them rely on them. The realm depends on Dao fate. Lu Xun pointed to one place and smiled with Huang Zhongho. That kid with good aptitude will have to grab Zhenjianfeng. It will be of great use in the future. You will have the next mountain owner to choose Yinxiu Mountain. As for the next mountain lord, of course it is the golden core cultivator of cultivating Cloud Peak in front of him. Lu Xun moved a few steps, patted Huang Zhongho on the shoulder and smiled. People who can ignore someone's initiative to persuade someone to drink and then threaten someone to drink a pot and spit 2 pots, not many people. It will be 100 years at most. You can brag about it with people everywhere. Wait for Huang Zhongho to recover. The Daoist is no longer visible. Huang Zhongho feels lost. He still doesn't know the name of this real person. In the Lake of Heart, the voice of the real person resounded. The name of the poor road is Anonymous. Huang Zhongho felt helpless. How did he explain the matter to the Patriarch Hall afterwards? And the benefactor who helped his family Xianxia survive the catastrophe was a foreign Daoist with the Dao name Anonymous? The realm of the gods, the Daoist temple is like a forest, and the avenue of the ancestors in the mountain is holding a 10-year urn ceremony, but compared to the previous Daoist rituals, there are now 2 more rituals. Outsiders. One is an official from the Dali accompanying Capital Department of Ceremony who came to the Divine Envoy sect, and the other is a Daelu under the Chongshu Bureau of Dali Capital, who is responsible for recording all the Taoist priests who have obtained the exorcism. Lu Xun has no objection to this, but when it is bigger, it is nothing more than a clear rule of the king, a secrecy of the law, the rule of the law and the rule of the king. Going deeper and deeper, it is said that after the rule of law in the country violates the prohibition and violation of the law of the Tao constrains people's minds when they first move in delusional thoughts. On the hill far away from the ancestor hall of the gods, in one of the humble little Taoist temples with the Kawaguan plaque hanging, an old Taoist priest is leading a group of little Taoists, doing that evening class, behavely recite a Taoist classic, old rote, young hard to memorize. Lu Xun sighed with his head in front of the door and walked away, listening badly, and shook his head and walked inside the Taoist temple after holding his hands. I saw a little Dao boy sweeping the floor and endorsing his book. He didn't memorize smoothly. He always memorized wrong, just like turning a book. If he memorized a mistake, he had to start over and recite a whole page. Lu Xun didn't bother the little Dao boy. Independent cleansing. He walked under the tree and shook it lightly. It is not easy to be a Taoist priest on the fairy mountain. Many of the trees in the mountains are always green all the year round. The fallen leaves are intermittent and there is no stopping. It is uneasy, unlike the Taoist temples under the mountain. Only autumn is the most tiring. After winter you can be lazy. As a result, when the little Dao Tong looked back, the good guy where's the bad guy, there was full of fallen leaves that swayed the ground, and the little Dao Tong rushed over with his broom when he was angry, and waited until the young Taoist turned his head. Xiaodaotong waited up and he was definitely unable to beat it, so he landed on the broom and pretended to sweep the ground. Lu Xun asked with a smile, "Little guy, did you teach urns? Now that urns have been born, how many times have you added urns?" Xiao Daotong snorted, "It's not the so-called family biography or private urn, which is given if you have money, not to mention that you have no money. If you have money, can you sweep the floor here?" The brothers of the same age in the Taoist temple are not only rich in the family, but they have received extra attention from the master. They have never washed the latrine and toilet, so they can't do it by themselves. Now it's fine. Picking manure and going to the vegetable garden, practice makes perfect. A good hand. Lu Xun sat on the railing. Behind him was a small pond with some carps, arms around his chest, and said, "The Tao is drowning in dung, it's good." Xiao Daotong was said to have been sad. He raised his head and stared. Seeing that the smelly Taoist who did not know where he came from was raising his arm and bending it again and again, Xiao Daotong understood the other party's reminder, and had to lower his head. Go boring and sweeping the floor as expected, the Taoist said to himself. Pan Dao's tendon flesh is all the hard work of planting trees, cutting trees and replanting trees all the year round. Naturally he has great skill and is usually strong. Han can't get close to the poor Dao's body at all. Xiaodaotong whispered, "Master Patriarch is right. You said it was just a fart." Lu Xun asked with a smile, "Why? Isn't it all the same sentence and the same reason?" Xiaodaotong added gravity, sweeping the fallen leaves flying around. "It can be the same, of course it is not the same. Anyway, I understand the truth but I can't say it." Lu Xian asked. Is it similar to the phrase if the world learns from me, it is like entering the way of the devil? Xiao Daotong raised his head. What the hell? Which Gaozhen said in which book? Lu Xian smiled and said, it was said by a Buddhist monk. Actually, Lu Xian already knew about Dao Tong's wonderful thinking, and the answer in his mind was quite interesting. It was indeed because Xiao Daotong couldn't say it. Xiao Daotong said, you still know a lot. Looking down at the fallen leaves on the ground, Xiao Daotong slandered in his heart at the same time that he was improper. Lu Xian asked, what's your name? The little Daotong was listless, lowered his head and swept the fallen leaves into the dustpan and whispered, the chief of the road called me Yu. It's the Yu of the Yushur. It's just that Xiaodaotong didn't say that this is the name that master helped to choose. Talking to an outsider is not guilty of talking about this. Lu Xian smiled and said, I will give the urn in the future. Is there anything I want to do? Xiao Daotong raised the broom in his hand and pointed to the direction of the patriarch's hall, but quickly put down the broom angrily. He was disrespectful. If he was seen by the master, he would be miserable. The fine copy of the scriptures could be copied most of the night, and he stepped on the fallen leaves in the dustpan. Stepped a little harder and then continued to sweep the fallen leaves. Xiao Daotong said casually, we Taoist temples are poor, and when I get rich in the future I will help the statue of the in the patriarch's hall to be gilded. It is a brand new clothes suit. Just put a layer of gold powder on it, it's fine. Lu Xian said, you are so sincere, and your ancestor master hasn't been able to show up quickly to be worthy of your innocent heart? Leave me as your ancestor master, so I must show up immediately and have a good chat with you. Sentence. The little Daotong was so annoyed that he raised his broom and pointed at the strange Taoist who didn't have any rules and said angrily, I've been holding you back for a long time, it's almost enough, otherwise I'll call my brother to come and beat you. Xiao Daotong quickly added, brothers. Lu Xian was too happy. He supported the railing with both hands, shook his legs, knocked on the railing lightly on his back heel and asked with curiosity, it's weird, why are you such a big mountain and so many Taoist temples? The temple of the patriarch has such a wooden Taoist temple, which is the poorest. Xiao Daotong said angrily, it's up to you. In fact, this problem, let alone oneself, is the brothers and sisters and the uncles are very curious. I only heard from the master that a Taoist priest has 2 veins and wears different crowns, which is not common in the entire Haoran world. For example, if the little Taoist boy really becomes a urn in the future, wearing a Taoist crown on his head will be a lotus crown. With the gods, the Taoist crown of the heavenly sovereign is different. Lu Xian smiled and said, I know the reason. It is because Qi Tianjun received a kind of preaching favor from your ancestor master. When he became the sect master, at first he was thinking of Taoist priests with 2 veins and a bowl of water was smooth. Later it was discovered that it was impossible to do so and there were many hidden dangers. On the contrary, the Taoism in the mountains of your line became less and less. Later, Qi Tianjun had to change a little way only to secretly relieve the incense of your line and found out it still didn't work. As a result, the entire Aquarius continent failed to do what he wanted. At any rate, there was a Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown who founded a sect outside the mountain. It was not until very later that he tried to barely understand a principle, what is the natural way of Taoism. It turned out that he did the wrong thing kindly, and then finally there is a King Liangzong in Luzhou and Beiju. Lu Xian pointed to the big tree, all things are like grass and trees with prosperity and death. The heaven and the earth can last for a long time. Because they don't live by themselves, they can live forever. The little Taoist was so confused that he would not talk to each other, lest he might show his cowardice. He suddenly asked, since you are a Taoist priest, why don't you call yourself Apo or Tao? Lu Xian smiled and said, the poor are not poor, the thieves have money. Xiaodaotong is a little envious. I don't have any entanglements on my body and I can't travel far and wide. Lu Xian waved his hand, you want to make a mistake in saying that I am a cultivator. It just so happens that everything is a dog and Tao is in the world. Lu Xian raised his palm, slowly lowered and repeated the last 4 words only with a subtle pause, the way is in the sky, down. Xiao Daotong said, you talk about yours and I will sweep mine. Lu Xian asked, I said that the vegetation has life and death. Everyone knows that the big tree next to you is still alive. Then I am going to ask you, what do you think of the fallen leaves in the dustpan by your feet? Think, is it life or death? Xiao Daotong shook his head. Lu Xian raised his hands and hugged the back of his head. It's not a boastful thing. The most dangerous time in my life to talk to people about the Tao tsk. It's really dangerous, I almost can't be a Taoist priest. Xiao Dao Tong raised his head and smiled. Was beaten by someone. Lu Shen said solemnly, you want to make a difference again. I was asking a very old and senior Taoist priest. Guess what? In fact, the earliest Taoist priest in the world said it was the monk. Xiao Dao Tong hugged the broom and blinked. Lu Chen showed a dazed expression, tilted his head back 3 times and whispered, "Don't talk about this fish pond." He watched a pot of water, 88,000 insects. I and the Taoist priest have traveled together for several years in the world. During the period I looked at the size, number, length, front and back, life and death, but I was still not convinced, and the man took me to a strange and weird world. The world is vast and profound. There is no universe and no universe. Regardless of possessions, there are countless small worlds, so many creatures, really like the sands of the Ganges River, and I am one of them. After a lot of hardships, spending countless hours and successful cultivation, if I stay here I will be there. Just as Sai can make thousands of stars disappear and raise your hand, you can make hundreds of Ascension Realm cultivators all die, and finally I start to travel far and have been to so-called Zhou Xian. In the world I have seen countless weird creatures, and I don't know the past thousands of years. I have chosen to sleep and sleep, and I don't know how many thousands of years. When I wake up, the stars that seem to be unchanging in the past are gone. The last certain one day when the sky suddenly opened up, I followed that path as if engulfing half of the world's endless Dao Qi spells and magical powers. I bumped away and finally was able to leave that place. As a result, at that time, Xiaodaotong heard that Mr. Xu was telling the story, so he hurriedly asked, "What happened?" Lu Shen smiled and said, "Foresee the funeral and listen to the next time to break down." Xiaodaotong sighed and understood. "Just treat me as owing you 3 pennies, okay?" Lu Chen raised his arms and asked with a smile, "If we get a bag out of a mosquito bite, do we like to stroke our nails like this?" Xiao Dao Tong raised a finger like a cross and smiled, "I like to swipe twice." Lu Chen smiled and nodded and pointed to himself. "That me is the redness and swelling on my arm that was bitten by a mosquito. I was crushed to death by a random finger." The little Dao Tong opened his mouth wide and finally couldn't help holding out his thumb. "Good story. It is really worth the 3 cents. Lu Shen smiled and said, "That's why I can't break through. Master is the most tired and lazy, and he doesn't want to explain to me. What can I do as a disciple? I can only find some answer myself." The little Dao Tong held a broom in his arms and was speechless for a long time. He only felt that the story told by Dao Chong was not too exciting. There was no scholarly fox charm and no real person on the scene. It was a bit weird and sounded good. I'm not too willing to tell the brothers and apprentices. After all, it took me 3 cents. The little Tao Tong finally couldn't help but exclaimed, "Where does the Taoist master come from?" Lu Shen smiled and beckoned. "It's true that palmistry is a must. You come, spread your hands and help you see your luck." Xiaodaotong immediately became vigilant. "This is a long line to catch a big fish in the final analysis, or is it to cheat me?" Lu Shen complained, "No money." Xiao Dao Tong asked, "Is it because you have seen bad palmistry so you have to charge extra money so that you can lose money and eliminate disasters?" Lu Shen took a breath of air, his own Dao pulse. How come out such a prodigy? In the future it will be a good material for setting up a fortune-telling booth with me. Xiao Dao Tong hesitated for a moment and finally he looked sad, pursed his mouth, put down his broom and said goodbye to the Daoist chief, hit a door, then bends down, lifted the dustpan with both hands and dropped the fallen leaves in the distance. Lu Shen sighed. The child originally wanted to ask his surname, but the words came to his lips and he felt that it was unnecessary. When the child dumped the fallen leaves of a dustpan, he turned his head and looked around. The young Taoist sitting on the railing was gone. Lu Chen had sneaked up to the threshold of the Taoist temple, and waved at the old Taoist master who was shabby and endorsed in that robe. The old Taoist saw it for the first time, smiled and shook his head, continued to endorse, and for the second time he saw the young Taoist priest who was still at the threshold. Beckoning vigorously over there, the old Taoist frowned slightly, and his eyes signaled that he was temporarily unavailable. When he saw it for the 3rd time, the old Taoist, who was the master of one view, got up with anger, strode towards the door and was about to reprimand. In a word, I never thought that his opponent would touch his sleeve with one hand, grab his own hand with the other and pat. The old master doesn't need to bow his head and weigh it up. Alas, it's some yellow and white things under the mountain, nothing more, it's just lighter. The young Taoist priest took out another handful of copper coins, and continued to pat it on the master of Laoguan. The latter lowered his head slightly, his eyes narrowed, his eyes lit up. Huh? Turned out to be snowflake money on 3 mountains. The old Guanju waited for a while and saw that the other party no longer touched his sleeves. He lightly clenched his fists, twisted his wrists and put them in the sleeves without dialogue. He pulled the other party away and asked directly, "How about fellow Daoists? Do you know that there is a private urn for this autumn view of the poor Dao? Do you understand the rules here?" The implication is that this Taoist private urn is no better than the official urn of the Zhongmen. Now the Dali court is strictly governed and has received a private urn. In the future it will be okay to set up roadside stalls, but it is difficult to make it to the elegant hall. In short, it is difficult to deceive the noble silver of the emperor, generals and senior officials. The young Taoist priest smiled knowingly. "If you don't understand, you can come? I just used it to show off those who don't know how to do it." Old Guanju sighed, stretched out his and gently twisted. "Dao friends understand the rules but don't understand the market. You have to add money." Old Guanju lowered his voice again and said, "I've said it, no refund." Lu Xun smiled and said, "Just add money, I just paved the way for Ayu." The old Taoist was stunned. "Are you the long-lost father of Ayu?" Lu Xun smiled and said, "Guess the subject." The old Taoist did not want to let go of this bully and continued to persuade him. "You know, fellow Taoists, the Taoist Taoism of the poor Tao is small, but the quota of 1 earned student every 10 years cannot be escaped. This was set by Qi Tianjun early. After all, Ayu is still young. There are a lot of uncles and brothers in the view and it is his turn in the year of the monkey. The Zhongmen Zhu Shirtang has strict assessments and no one will be able to teach it. Once the recommended person fails to pass the urn, and the place will be lost in the next 10 years. But in this view of Qiuhao, they are all their own family members and monks, regardless of the quality of the temperament. The ancestors said it. The rule is, if someone has outstanding merits, those who are superior in Taoism can also be promoted to the urn. I really want to say that we can teach urns by ourselves. It is not true compared to that of the ancestors, but the identity of the urns is also true. Well, when the time comes to wear a lotus crown, he will not be a real Taoist priest. These are not the idiots who came out indiscriminately with a mouth. What do you think of fellow Taoists?" The young Taoist nodded his head under the view of the old view, but he just didn't pay. Urgent. Lu Xun looked at this old master who had cleaned his robes, and then looked at his heart full of thoughts to coat Grand Master with a layer of gold. And the entire Grand Master Hall must be renovated, how the scenery will be restored, how to look back and look good. The neighboring Taoist temples came to show their presence, and in the future they will be able to stand up a bit when offering their ancestors to their ancestors. After a series of thoughts, Lu Xun was a little bit dumbfounded for a while. Lu Xun patted the old Taoist on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Okay, don't cry poorly with me. I heard my grandparents crying, so I told Qizhen when I turned around and asked him to open a separate one. The urn conferring ceremony gave us Ayu a real urn identity." Listening to this young Taoist priest's rebellious assholes, the old master was so angry that he would punch him in the chest. "Shut up." Lu Xun moved sideways and avoided the punch. It wasn't that he felt shameless when he was beaten by the punch. He was really worried that the punch would fall on the spot and it would be bad for the stereotypes. Lu Xun stretched out his hand and said with a hippie smile, "This is this." Tang collapsed. "Give me back the money." Old Guanzu's face was pale, he sighed and he was about to find out the money that was in his pocket and said, "The Taoist friend is stingy." Lu Xun smiled and said, "Oh?" The next moment the old watcher rubbed his eyes vigorously. The young Taoist in front of him wearing a lotus crown. And that lotus crown, whether it is a true Taoist or a fake Taoist priest, absolutely dare not pretend to be a Taoist priest in the world. Who dares to imitate this Taoist temple without authorization, let alone wear it on the head without permission? What's more, Kawaguan is still in the realm of the gods. Therefore at the next moment the old view master burst into tears and excitement. He staggered back a few steps and knelt down with a thump, and then began to kowtow for his patriarch. The old Taoist's lips trembled and he couldn't say a word. Sorry, his face was full of tears, but he couldn't help it, so he started to cry. For so many years, from the incumbent master of self-qualification, and then push all the way up generations of masters, as if they have cultivated the Tao for a lifetime, have only cultivated a big poor character, and the days are suffering. Xian squatted down and patted the old Taoist on the shoulder. He was so poor that he could not touch the flesh. He smiled and comforted softly, I know, it's not easy for everyone. The old Taoist cried so sad that he finally remembered that he was squatting next to his grandpa, the head teacher of Bai Yujing, and quickly wiped away his tears. As soon as he was about to get up, he looked up and found that the grandpa was sitting on the ground somehow. The old View master shrank his head and shoulders tremblingly, and sat on the ground together. Xian just stood up and said with a smile, after leaving, remember to wait until Xian comes back from the barren world. You go and tell Xian that Yu is now my direct disciple, let him figure it out by himself. Old Guanju nodded vigorously and once again dazzled, there was no trace of his ancestor. Shen traveled across the continent, passing by the sea between the two continents, looking down. Fish shape makes water, human shape makes Tao. Remember that back then, it seemed that I had heard a question and answer with my own ears. Said the road cannot float in the sea. The student answered, why bother to study and then study? Xian raised his head and glanced at the sky, suddenly speeding up. Yufeng's figure stopped and then dropped his figure, looking straight down at the mountains and rivers. Coming to the outside of the Patriarch Hall of the Patriarch of Mazong Mui Mountain, Xian only changed his appearance slightly. Soon several ancestors came here. Wei Yusong was very surprised and asked softly, I don't know, the real person is here. Xian coughed and said straight to the point, that gift magic weapon given by poor Dao back then. Several ancestors looked at each other. Wei Yusong was the first to notice something was wrong and said angrily, cut him. Damn, how dare you pretend to be a real fire dragon and come to Mui Mountain to make a ghost. That magic weapon. Once the sect celebration was over, the previous suzerain had already returned it to the fire dragon in private. Not to mention Zhu Quan said the general process. Her father, that is, the previous suzerain, and the old real person, both of you push me. I was very polite and the old man smiled at this. One must be given, one must not be accepted, one is hard-hearted and the other is shameless. It is probably such a picture of the kindness of the senior and the understanding of etiquette. In the end, the old real man really couldn't get rid of it. He patted his suzerain on the shoulder and his eyes were pleased, almost like Dao He Zongman, who can be regarded as an old real person who divides the account between 3 and 7. The real person promises that in the next few hundred years, the 10 days of each year will be ignored elsewhere. Anyway, it is not suitable for a sword repairman to come here to ask about swords. Simply put, about MO is just the phrase, I am familiar on the road, you Maishan patriarch, I am covered. Xian Lu is so lucky, he deserves to be the real fire dragon. Shrinking the ground in one step, he came directly to the Qingliangzong of his own Dao. It is a pity that the direct disciple is not in the mountains now. Aloft, white walls and glazed tiles, and hanging bells on the 4 corners under the eaves. Besides, there are huts in the mountains, even monks' residences. For a Zongzi head fairy family, whether it is the size of the site or the atmosphere of the mansion, it is indeed a bit too shabby. Fortunately, He Xiaoyang still has a small cave in his hand. Otherwise, as a master and patriarch, I will have a handful of bitter tears. In fact, Qin Pinggan's success in Xiandan City is the most suitable for her female disciple. Beautiful lady, a secluded residence in the mountains, holding a whisk in her hand, complement each other. It's just that Xian dared to ask for it. Even if he succeeded, he didn't dare to give it away. At that time, Qin Pinggan would definitely be chased and chopped down, and it is estimated that there is no room for discussion. A sword light lit up in front of his eyes, not intending to hurt people, and the warning was even stronger. Xian staggered, cursing, good disciple, dare to deceive the master and destroy the ancestor. The female cultivator hurriedly retracted the flying sword, and the person swayed and almost hit her flying sword by herself. If the sword was not retracted quickly, it would cause her to change from scary to murder. The woman said in a deep voice, do you know the consequences of a Taoist trespassing into the Qingliang sect? I saw the young Taoist slap his head, and an ordinary lotus crown appeared and hurriedly said, my family, my family. The woman was stunned. A fellow Taoist? Xian answered the wrong question and smiled. It seems that our sect master, he is the most important and the most distressed to you. This young woman's crown is named Ganji. Exactly half of a citrus? She rolled her eyes. Is it an irony? Do you like poking your heart? Master is the most partial and he is least welcome. 2 senior sisters, They were a colorful elk and a nearby object at the meeting ceremony when they came to Master's door. They came to their side while just a few oranges. They are the most common kind of oranges in Yamashita market. At the beginning she still felt that Master had other profound meanings, but it was actually a panacea. When she chewed slowly and finished eating, there was really no mystery. The only unusual treatment was that every time Master went out and went down the mountain, he returned to the mountain. At that time she would bring her a few oranges. Lu Chen turned his head and looked at one place and said with a smile, "Tian de Fu Yuan, even me who is his junior would be envious. Master is not on the mountain now and she is going to Wuxia for a long trip." She first informed her colleagues to come here quickly, and then following the sight of the young Taoist priest, Ganji saw the fence in the distance. There was once Mr. Li. I was invited by my teacher's father to the mountains to help them preach and teach karma. And before going down the mountain, Mr. Li personally planted some flowers and plants, including creeper, morning glory, and a bowl lotus in a small water tank. It is strange to say that it is an ordinary bowl lotus, not a fairy flower, but when the flowers bloom, there will be green water spring waves in the small water tank, and water will come out of the standing leaves, blooming 300 layers of beauty. Lu Xian sat down in the corridor, stretched out his fingers and shook it lightly, and the bell shook ding ding dong dong, crisp and sweet. A kind of fish love is different. Some people like to fish and eat fish, some people just like to feed fish. Except for the female champion Ganji, all the suzerains who stayed in the mountains have already rushed here. Lu Xian lifted his cheek with one hand, startled, suddenly remembered something and asked, "I heard that the great sword fairy in the north Bai Chong has ever said something to He Xiaoyang? It seems to mean that He Xiaoyang should not expect to be able to ascend to the Ascension realm in Beiju Luzhou in this life." Lu Chen was just about to stand up, and at this moment he faintly saw the fence. Senior brother seemed to be standing there many years ago, smiling and shaking his head to his side, and he was clearly saying something, and he returned to Bai Yujing, "Be careful about the future. In a certain questioning sword you must protect your senior brother Yudo and a Bai Yujing." Sword of Coming Chapter 9-10. Luopa Mountain. At the gate of the mountain, Qin Lingjun looked around, taking advantage of no outsiders, sneaking out a pot of wine, twisting his wrist. 2 more stacked wine bowls appeared, and tossed to a new janitor across the table. A boy in Tsing-yi sat opposite a young Taoist priest. One stepped on the bench, the other took off his boots and sat cross-legged. Qin Lingjun leaned forward, stretched his arms and bumped into the young Taoist priest. The latter drank a large sip of wine and laughed, "Empty clothes and empty clothes." Qin Lingjun asked, "Brother Xianmi, don't you feel that you lose face when you watch the door here? If you're not happy, just say something, I'll just transfer you back to Qilong Alley. Anyway, the old chef is good for discussion. Just one sentence. The trivial matter. What silly things, hurry up and punish yourself for a bowl." Xianwei lifted his chin. "What is my character, Brother Jingqing, don't you understand? You can't hide things in your mouth and you can't hide things in your heart. It's just an outspoken person who never compromises. If you don't like staying here. By the side, it's already been rolled back to Qilong Alley." According to Qin Lingjun's statement, Xianwei was considered a child of a handyman from the Kaipu in Qilong Lane, and he had been promoted to a child of the outer door of the Luopa Mountain. Even if it was not a step to the sky, it was not too far away. I heard that the first janitor of Luopa Mountain was a guy named Jing Dafeng. After that, Qin Shan's his proud disciple Chao Sunny, Liu Beixiang's direct disciple Yuan Lai, and Master Zhou, who was the protector of Luopa Mountain's right, had been having worked here as an errand. If it weren't for the right guard to travel a long distance, this kind of good thing would not be Xianwei's turn. Now this heavy burden fell on Xianwei's shoulders, and of course it was the result of the strong recommendation of Brother Jingqing. In the Chaotu shop in Qilong Alley, without Brother Jia sitting in the town, it would be really meaningless. Coming here, regardless of the world and the world, it would be comfortable. In fact, at the beginning Xianwei felt bored, but just by accident, Xianwei found a treasure mountain in Jing Dafeng's house. There is no end to learning. Now, let alone the rain and snow, even if there are knives in the sky, Xianwei can stay still at the gate of this mountain. Xianwei was a little bit upset for his brothers. The creation of the next sect is such a big thing. The mountain lord won't call you over? Not waiting for Qin Lingjun to find a reason, Xianwei asked and answered himself, Yes, we must have a backbone on the side of the sect. Otherwise the mountain lord must be worried. Such a big family business. It is not appropriate to be a thief. Oh, if I say the wrong thing, I will punish myself for a bowl." Qin Lingjun laughed loudly and raised his wine bowl aloft. brothers are united and it is profitable. If we both look at the door, the master can only put 100 hearts on it. A girl in a pink skirt stood silently on the other side of the steps. Qin Lingjun immediately assumed a hungry tiger leaping against the sheep. He suddenly leaned forward and lay on the table. He stretched out a hand to block the jug in the wine glass, turned sideways, turned his back to the side of the steps and complained loudly, "Xianwei, why are you drinking alcohol? It's not proper. I can't persuade you no matter how you persuade. Let's forget it today. If I do this next time I will be angry. Brothers belong to brothers. Rules belong to rules. Let's not take this as an example." Xianwei understood without squinting. With a look of guilt on his face, nodded and said, "I blamed me for being greedy, one didn't control it." Wanshu reminded, "Uncle Jing said that the gate of the mountain is the eye of a person. The first impression it gives is very important. Therefore it is best not to drink at ordinary times. If you are really greedy you should drink less. You can stay in the house. Have a few drinks in the courtyard and at the same time pay attention to whether there are any guests at the door. When someone is near the gate, quickly get rid of the alcohol before going out to entertain guests, so as not to let the guests from outside the country misunderstand the atmosphere of our lost mountain." While pretending to be listening with ears upright, Qin Lingjun secretly grimaced at Xianwei. Wanshu didn't even look at the Qin Lingjun and smiled at the young Taoist priest. "Dao Master Xianwei, I didn't say you, I said someone." Qin Lingjun was so angry that he turned his elbow out of the way, but he couldn't get angry with a girl, turned his head and said with a hippie smile, "I'm so idle today I have walked to the gate of the mountain." "Are you lazy?" Wanshu said in a huff. "Mr. Zhu asked me to give you a word. Huang Tinghua, the royal river god, just sent a letter to our mountain saying that I will be a guest at Luapa Mountain today. When I apply for a drink, Mr. Zhu let you figure it out. Oh, drink well later, but drink vigorously, who cares about you?" After speaking I left. There are still a lot of things to be busy on the mountain. Xianwei looked surprised. When the little butler of Luopashen climbed up the steps and gradually walked away, he lowered his voice and asked, "It's rare to see Wanshu and be angry, what's the matter?" Qin Lingjun looked sad, held back for a long time and said vaguely, "Little girl film, I have such a little misunderstanding with my Yujian water god brother." Xianwei curiously said to say. Qin Lingjun became more and more embarrassed. With long hair and short knowledge she knows what she knows. There is nothing to say, drinking and drinking. It turned out that the Yujiang water god back then begged Qin Lingjun's side, and finally succeeded in obtaining a peaceful nothing card issued by the Ministry of Criminal Affairs. At the wine table in the small town outside the mountain, when giving the no-fault sign, the boy in Tsingyi stood up at the wine table and said that it was a trivial matter. But in fact Qin Lingjun had a dusty nose just on Weibo's side. As the monarch of Beiyue Mountain, Piyun Mountain is still the neighbor of his own Luapa Mountain, and he is also a friend who wears a pair of trousers with the master. Well, it doesn't matter if I refuse to help, and I also said a lot of deliberately disgusting people. It's really nothing. I had to go elsewhere to burn incense and I begged for it anyway, and finally I had to take out a master as a New Year's red envelope for myself. The snake gallstone, still the favorite one, ran to Piyun Mountain again overnight and spent a long time at the foot of the mountain. It was not that he was reluctant to bear the snake gallstone. I was really worried about listening to Weiss for the third time. Gritting his teeth, I always feel that I can't blame the Yujiang Shueishan brothers. I can't pick it up at Piyun Mountain at the most because of my little face. No one sees it anyway. I can't lose sight of Luapa Mountain and Yujiang. After making a deal with Wei Bo, it was considered that he had bought a card from the Ministry of Punishment with real money. After a few years, Yujiang Water God also came to Tsing Yi Boy for a drink. He said that he hadn't seen him for too long and missed his brother, so even if he left the jurisdiction as the water god, he had to ask Huang Tinghua and the Dali court for 2 guan yuan. Can walk all the way to Luapa Mountain, it doesn't matter, these are trivial matters. Then in the tallest restaurant in that small town the two brothers were full of food and drink. Yujiang Water God suddenly remembered something. He said that when he came he saw the water temple of Taifujiang Yanghua and was a little envious. I want Qin Lingjun to help me a little bit so that I can say a few words to the Dali dynasty, the sovereign state of Huangting State, so that several tributary rivers of other families on the border of the Yujiang River can be transferred to the Yujiang site. In this way, when Qin Lingjun returned to Yujiang in the future, the old brothers also had face. Yujiang Shueishan smiled and said that he just said it so that Qin Ling didn't need to take it too seriously. Qin Lingjun bit his head and of course did not decline the matter. Uncle Qin did not have a no on the wine table. However, Qin Lingjun did not have a big deal this time, saying that he would be able to do it, but he still gave a large amount of fairy money, saying that his brothers should go to the Huang Tingwa Imperial Court to make arrangements. As for himself, of course will help to say a few words. It is incumbent. In fact, the face of Yujiang Shueishan at that time was not so pretty. Qin Lingjun was just in a sad mood and didn't say much. As soon as Yujiang Water God left the town, Qin Lingjun bit his head and went to Piyun Mountain first. When I returned to Luopa Mountain, I squatted on the ground to pick melon seeds to eat. On Wan Shu, who seemed to be suddenly resuscitated, Qin Lingjun said of course that he hadn't paid for it. It's just that in Piyun Mountain before Wei Boss words were uncomfortable. If you don't help, you want help. He also likes to talk about something that is not righteous. He said something that made Qin Lingjun feel uncomfortable. The rough meaning is to scold Qin Lingjun that Yujiang Water God who treats you as a fool and you treat you as such a fool? Even after many years, Qin Lingjun felt uncomfortable when he thought of this asshole. It was true that he failed to help the brothers of the God of Water. Yujiang still failed to annex those rivers, so many years have passed. There is no revisit to the hometown of Yijin. Qin Lingjun drank a long sulky drink and drank the wine in one go. In Yujiang that year, Qin Lingjun never treated him badly. There's no reason to mix well by yourself and you don't recognize your former friends. I just don't know if Brother Water God came to Luopashan to find himself if he wanted something, and if he could help to do it. Also worry too. Fortunately, there is wine on hand and friends in front of me. There was still half an hour left before Shinshur. Qin Lingjun hesitated for a long time, but did not wait for the Yujiang Water God brother at the gate of the mountain, but said goodbye to Xianwei and said that he was going to meet his friends in Red Candle Town. About an hour later, Qin Lingjun returned from Yufeng from Hongzhou town and fell to the ground. With his two sleeves flung up, he swaggered towards the gate of the mountain and opened his voice to the old brother Xianwei who was sitting on the bamboo chair. He smiled and said, "My water brother, I'm so stupid wasting so much officialdom and walking such a long way. Guess what? Just ask me for a drink." Xianwei leaned back in his chair lazily, basking in the warm eyes of the end of winter, nodded vigorously and gave a thumbs up. Things gather in groups, people are divided into groups. After all, they are friends of Brother Jingqing. Next time I have a chance, help me introduce referral. As a result, I will travel to Yujin in the future, so I want have a few good drinks and meat. Xianwei now knows Qin Lingjun's temper. It is more useful to praise his friend than to praise him. With a big wave of his hand, Qin Lingjun sat on the bamboo chair beside him, stretched his legs and held the back of his head, with a big smile on his face. "Fart big thing, don't talk nonsense. In fact, I once asked the Lord in private about which day Yujiang Water God would come to Luopashan as a guest, and whether he could take a friend to stroll around Luopashan. The master smiled and said that of course it's okay. Except for the Zhulu and Jiasfeng Zushitang, all are possible. The scenery on the top of Jiasfeng is good. You must take him there. When you come back you can follow Nwanshu. Say hello, help you to prepare some melon and fruit snacks, just say that I said it. It's just that the master also said, it's better to make an appointment with the two of you when I'm on the mountain and let me, the mountain owner, come to do something and invite him to have a drink. Master today happens to be not on the mountain, busy with important things on Tongyi's his side. Qin Lingjun was worried that the old cook in Wanshu would be annoying, so he didn't feel embarrassed to take Yujiang Water God to the Luopa mountain. If my master is on the mountain, see if he still goes to Red Candle Town, just find a restaurant over there to drink. But let the master invite someone to drink in person. Therefore, Qin Lingjun never made an appointment with Yujiang Water God. Qin Lingjun didn't want to let the master drink this kind of entertainment drink. His friend, after all, is not the master's friend, so there is no need. After all, I was the first to follow the master to this Luopa mountain. I know the hard work and difficulty of the master for so many years. My face can be worthless, but the master's face must be very valuable. Zhu Lian sat on the top of the steps and Shanjun Weibo stood aside, looking at the little idiot with flying brows at the mountain gate. Before Qin Lingjun, Weibo found the Yujiang Water God who was spreading the message of the flying sword to the fallen mountain. In fact, it was the instruction of the mountain owner Qin Pingon. It seems that I had expected such an incident a long time ago, saying that if he happened to be not on the mountain, the Yujiang Water God would come to Qin Lingjun again. If it was really just drinking, it was good. Let Qin Lingjun stroll through the Luopa mountain and then go. There was no problem with having a drink over Piyun mountain, so Zhu Lian and Wei Bo said hello, saying that he had agreed to Qin Lingjun. But if Qin Lingjun was asked to help again, Then after Fei Jin sent the letter to Luopa Mountain, Zhou Xian would notify Wei Bo as soon as possible and trouble Wei Shanjun to block the door. If he can help as much as possible. Those who need to be converted into immortal money don't need to follow Luopa. Shan is polite, it's just a brother who has settled the account. But I have to remind the Yujiang water god, let's not take it as an example. Wei Bo curiously asked, if Yujiang water god doesn't open this mouth today? Qin Pingon will really invite him to drink on the mountain? Zhu Lian smiled and said, of course. Otherwise you think? My son is actually almost spoiling this Uncle Qin to the sky. Since Qin Lingjun is stupid, the son is also stupid with him. Otherwise he would not deliberately leave the position of the left guard of the Luopa mountain in the air for many years. Just to say that Qin Lingjun's trip to Beiju Luzhou in Dadu took a lot of his son's thoughts? In Cui Dongshen's words, I just want to carefully mark out where I go to the latrine. Zhu Lian raised his hand, sighed softly and asked with a smile, what did you do for me? Wei Bo twitched the corners of his mouth and said with no good air, fortunately there is no big mouth from a lion, but this time the evaluation of the gods of the landscape, the Yujiangshui Palace, originally got Abing Shang. I helped raise it to the first level and was promoted to Yixia. The boundary of the 5 sacred mountains of Aquarius and the 2 Gonghaoshi mansions in Dadu in the central part are qualified to hold a 10-year landscape evaluation to evaluate the various landscape gods and city temples in their respective jurisdictions. A total of grades A, B, C and C ratings hanging in the air above A in fact is just doing something unless it is of great merit. This comment is generally not given. Inferior A can be promoted to 1 level. Therefore in A it is possible to skip the promotion. Generally speaking, the Dali court is only in charge of inspections, and is unlikely to overturn a certain evaluation result. Unless it is a comment on the emperor needs to convene a court meeting. If there is a mountain and water who is awarded the title of A, he will be dismissed from the court. The discussion of the imperial study room was put on the agenda. As for the second subordinate, only the Minister of Rights who was responsible for the genealogy of landscapes was required to contact Wuyue Mountain Monarch and Dadu Gongho in private. Zhu Lian said, this is still a small favor? According to Daoist landscape laws he was beaten into C and so on, so he couldn't eat it and walked away. If it is the most inferior grade C you will immediately lose your status. In C the gold body will be lowered to the first grade rank, and the grade rank will remain unchanged. However, in addition to watching the after effects, if the next evaluation fails to reach the second level in the middle, even if it is the second one, it will be lowered to the gods. I believe this is the root of why Yujiang water god dared to come to Luopa mountain to find Qin Lingjun. Otherwise, the landscape of Aquarius Island, not to mention a water from the 5th rank of a small country under the Great Li domain, is estimated to be a high rank of the 3rd rank. If there is no incense accumulated in the early years, no one can guarantee that he will reach the gate of Luopa mountain. You must be able to climb mountains. Therefore, who would dare to rush to Luopa mountain as a guest? The reason is very simple. A Luopa mountain, the genealogy members come together just like that. Who do you want to be responsible for hospitality? Is it the young sword fairy mountain master of Luopa mountain? Or Qin Pingon, the hidden official of the Great Wall of Jianqi? Wei Bo laughed and said, I actually gave Yujiang a 10-year time limit. If the next big exam fails to get a B middle school, my Beiwei appraisal department will have to settle the old and new accounts together. Although I didn't say that directly, the guy understands it. Anyway, based on Yujiang's background, he really wants to serve snacks and then take out a little family property from the treasury and pour more fairy money into Yujiang and its tributaries. It's not too difficult to be a middle school. What's more, if you really want to win a middle school, you can still get a gold and copper money from the reward and punishment division. This account is easy to figure out. Yujiang doesn't lose much money. Zhu Lian joked, don't say anything else, just say that Lord Shanjun can show up and block the way in person. Whether it's a kind of persuasion or a beating, it's just a bargaining table that can't be bought for a lot of money. Wei Bo glanced at the gate of the mountain and couldn't help asking, you said, can our Uncle Qin guess the twists and turns here? Zhu Lian smiled and shook his head and said, he is a real fool, he can't guess, he won't think about it. Wei Bo smiled and nodded, I really want to have that brain, it's already in the Yupu state and the tail won't be up to the sky. Zhu Lian turned to his family, it's okay. Wei Bo couldn't help asking again, I just don't understand what Qin Lingjun thinks. No matter how stupid he is, he should always know the points. Is he really stupid or pretending to be stupid? Zhou Xian smiled without saying anything. The old cook just sat on the steps, raised his gaze and looked into the distance. Yunxing Day is uninhabited, searching Qifeng for drafts. Wei Bo remembered something and couldn't help but say, the couplet sent by Luopa Mountain is really liked by Guangfu Temple. Otherwise, it won't hang in the middle with the gift couplet from Xiankong Temple in China. Zhou Xian smiled and said nothing. At the Zen temple in Aquarius, which has just entered the head of the sect, there is a respected Buddhist dragon elephant, and the ascension ceremony was held not long ago. Somehow he found Weibo in Piyun Mountain and Luopa Mountain because of the relationship. Because the incident was rushed and could not be delayed, Weibo asked Zhou Xian to do it for him and present a couplet. Zhou Xian wanted to fly a sword to spread the letter to Xiandu Mountain. Originally, this kind of thing should have been written by the mountain owner for reasons and emotions, but it was really too late in time, so he had to imitate his own son's handwriting, and the son intentionally left aside. The private seal of Qin Pingon was in the bamboo building. Zhou Xian was supposed to take it whenever he needed to use it. After writing the couplet, he sealed the private seal and asked Wei Bo to send it to the Buddhist temple. The old monk who served as the abbot was difficult in Buddhism, and there were two Zen allusions to picking clouds and putting tigers out. Pick up clouds to make up for the dead, and let the tiger go back to the mountain. Zongfeng is like a dragon, and when he sees nature he becomes a Buddha. Climb to the throne of Dharma and roar as a lion. In the Millennium Darkroom a light will light up. Wei Bo is about to return to Piyun Mountain. The case is like mountains and seas, not an exaggeration at all. Never thought that some of Zhou Lian's words made Wei Bo not only stop but also sat on the steps. Some people read books and like to go back and read. Zhou Lian put his cheeks in his hands, squinted his eyes and smiled and said softly, Qin Ling Jun is the same and so is your Wei Bo, but the content you look at is different. And when we choose to look through the pages of old books, we all like to read the most beautiful words. So even if the time has passed, it doesn't matter if the real thing is wrong. At dusk, far away from the vast mountains, light rain and breeze are faint clouds. His own number of peaks is thin and thin. After completely moving out of the Longquan sword sect in the boundary of the state, Su Xiaoqiao took two newly accepted direct disciples on a trip, and Xie Ling was practicing in retreat. As a result, Lu Xianyang, the new lord, took Mizu back to the teacher's gate very rarely, only to see a big brother, Dong Gu, teaching swordsmanship for a group of disciples. Those registered disciples who were in the mountains a little later than Dong Gu and Su Xiaoqiao back then did not leave those few sword fairy embryos behind when they took office. The ones who really became the disciples of Wan Qiong's room, on the contrary, were relatively inferior. The two survivors of Lu's criminals were just young children from that year, and now they have become other people's masters. Lu Xianying asked, "Where's Taismith Wan? Why didn't I strike iron on the mountain today? Before I came to the mountain, didn't Feijian pass the letter?" Dong Gu ignored it. In the entire Aquarius Island, the only one who dared to call Master Wan Taijiang is this junior. The two emperors have respected the master. One continent immortal master does not need to talk about others, but only talks about the former neighbor of Luopishan, Qin Shanzhu, dare you? So now the disciples of Longquan sword sect's re-inheritance, one by one, admire the patriarch Wan Qiong, who has always lived in Jinzong and can't see anyone, because they have heard the elder Su Xiaoqiao, who said a few words. Once she said that when Qin Jianxian was a teenager in a small town, he used to work in the blacksmith shop built by our sect on the Longshu River. It was the kind of part-time job at the bottom of the mountain, and Qin Jianxian was on master's side in the early years, and he was very courteous and thoughtful. Respectful and respectful. Lu Xianyang coughed and reminded, "Brother Dong, the Lord is asking you something." Dong Gu said with a sharp glance, "I don't know what to say back to the sect master." The round-faced girl complained softly, "On Brother Dong's side, what do you have for the Supreme Master? Seeing outside but not seeing the outside, boring is not boring?" Crying Yue didn't say anything from his heart, but deliberately said it to Dong Gu. "Now that I am so sophisticated, not to mention his proficiency, he can be regarded as entering the room." Lu Xianying complained, "We are up and down the sect, just a few people, add together is there 50? Isn't it a bit shabby? Think I was studying abroad and had to line up when I was sitting in the pit." Dong Gu chuckled. According to the promise made at the time, Wan Qiong resigned as the sovereign and handed over to Lu Xianying, the first of the Longquan Jinzong to enter the Jade Realm, as his successor. However, such a major event was only decided at a dinner table, and then no celebration was held. Ping Zhou knew of this. Not many Xianxia hilltops. Only the Dai court sent a ceremonial book. Personally took people to Longquan Jinzong to make up the congratulations. Not many people, not light. And the first thing Lu Xianying did after he became the sovereign was to make a good opinion. Went to Piyun Mountain to find Wei Shanjun, and used his great magical powers to help relocate several hills including Xianxia Mountain to this side. Patting Dong Gu on the shoulder, Lu Xianying said earnestly, "Senior brother Dong, you must practice hard. My dignified Longquan sword sex discipline is just a nascent soul. It's not plausible." After that, Lu Xianying took the round-faced girl and walked around the other hills. The two walked on the road in the middle of the mountain. Lu Xianying was wearing a cotton-padded jacket like her, bowing his head and holding hands. Otherwise, how would he call Mao Dong during the winter? The round-faced girl who gave herself the name of Yu Qianyue asked, "Why didn't he invite you to create the next sect? Such a big matter?" Lu Xianying smiled and said, "I'm afraid I will steal his limelight. If I play, who will care about him?" Qin Pingon. Of course, Qin Pingon had already explained this to Lu Xianying. Kaiwei rolled his eyes. Lu Xianying smiled for no reason. The same person enduring hardship and enjoying good luck are two completely different kinds of knowledge. Kaiwei nodded. There is so much truth. Lu Xianying sighed with emotion and stopped to look away. Set up a vain heart house with reason and material desire competing to be the master. After getting along for a long time, Xiaoyu almost forgot about this guy. He used to study for many years in Nan Pasuozhou's Tanruchen family. Xiaoyu asked, "Did you have such a good relationship with Qin Pingan when you were young?" "Of course." Lu Xianying laughed and said, "No. It's a little weird to credit the month, isn't it?" Lu Xianying squatted down. After searching for a long time, he couldn't find the root of licorice. He had to give up and slowly said, "It is said that the relationship between two friends is similar, and the relationship between two friends can last. Do you think the personalities of Qin Pingan and I are the same?" Xiaoyu shook his head. "If you were as virtuous as that hidden official, we would not be able to eat a pot of dried duck bamboo shoots. Qin Pingan has been careful since I was a child and didn't talk a lot. I'm so carefree. I want to say anything. I don't care if it sounds good or not. I don't care about it. Let's talk about it." The two sides met back then. At the beginning I got along with Qin Pingan. Actually, I also think it's boring. I think this guy is boring. I like to joke. I often punch and kick with my peers. Seems that this is the way to be close. This is a good relationship. Of course, I will pay more attention to strength. Qin, at the time of Pingan I was not beaten less, but I was just joking with him, but I was not angry. Then one day I was kicked from behind by a neighbor who naturally was also joking, but I was so angry that it just happened. When I was in a bad mood I had a fierce fight with him. Later Qin Pingan found the herbal medicine. I suddenly understood one thing. I have a problem with my life. Anyway, after that I seldom talk with anyone anymore, but Qin Pingan still often follows me and goes up and down the river together. I taught him some messy things. Over time I got used to it. Seems to have become friends. When I was young I used to play fist-smashing games with people, to see who couldn't bear the pain first, and until one side gave up I always won. Qin Pingan never played this. Later he had a little slug behind his ass. But I like to play with me, fart the big kid, don't admit defeat, cry while playing, and resolutely refuse to give up. Qin Pingan has to talk badly, so he persuades the little slug not to play and then let me not play this with the little snot. That kind of big kid, it's just when you grow up you can't stand a beating. For some reason, no matter what Qin Pingan is now, what kind of person will Qin Pingan be in the future? In Lu Xianying's eyes, it seems that he will always be just the dark, thin, bright-eyed boy in Mud Bottle Alley. He will look serious when he does everything. He will look at each other's eyes when he talks to others. He will only squeeze when he is thinking about things. He started talking, "I don't know what I'm thinking," and I didn't say anything when I asked, just like the whole hometown, where the days of chaos are in the present, those with hope are thinking about the future, the ones with no money are thinking about earning money, only the taciturn strawshoe boy seems to be alone, one person go backwards. Lu Xianying sighed. "Anyway, the three of us have grown up. Once upon a time the stream was getting shallower, the well water was getting colder, the locust tree was getting older, the iron lock was rusty, and the big cloud was drooping. No peach blossoms can be seen in peach leaves this year. Now it is, the snow melts, the green hills thaw, the water under the ice sounds, the yellow warbler under the leaves. Another year of peach blossoms and the best spring this year." In the night, one person sneaked into the Huishan temple in Suijia town. After this person entered the newly repaired main hall of the Wuxian temple, he did not dare to wake up the snoring temple blessing, and tore off the snow mud talisman on his body to prevent the minions of the city temple from being aware of the traces, but the man's palm remained the same. Secretly grasping the walnut that Senior Qin gave away, facing the painted statue of clay sculpture, clasped his fist and said, "Do you of the Ghost Axe Palace, pay a visit to the temple. If there is a lot of harassment, I will leave after a while. Do you has traveled the rivers and lakes over the years?" In addition to entering the Sevuing realm from the peak of the Dongfu realm that year, he also learned 2 talisman. The good old man gave him 2 pages of paper. Talisman painting tricks of the landscape breaking obstacles. Du Yu is naturally qualified to practice talisman. Otherwise he would not be able to teach the steel talisman and snow mud talisman that belonged to the mountain family school, to the predecessor of the sword fairy who claimed to be Qin Good. It can be seen that these 2 immortal urns are very different from the ordinary landscape charms used to prevent ghosts from hitting walls. A big bearded man appeared from the statue in the temple, floated to the ground and asked with a smile, "Is it going to be a problem again?" Du Yu smiled miserably and was really hit. Before coming to the ancestral temple in Suijiaking, Du Yu had even stolen a trip to Zongyun Lake and found the lake monarch Yin Ho. The other party didn't get into trouble. After hearing about Du Yu's experience, Yin Ho only said that the little Zongyun Lake was absolutely unable to protect him, so he quickly found another way out. The Hujuan was still talking about loyalty, and asked him if he needed the entanglement needed to run. The temple is small and the hospitality is poor. The man waved his hand and drove 2 side-by-side benches from the corner of the wall, and threw a pot of wine to Du Yu. "Tell me what happened. I'm so mediocre. I definitely won't be able to help, but please drink and listen to you vomiting, it's okay." Du Yu rushed along the road, exhausted and fearful. At this moment he sat down on the bench, raised his hand to catch the hip flask and took a sip with his head up. In fact, one shouldn't be here. Pay attention, it will cause the temple master to get into a landscape lawsuit. If there is a fairy teacher to ask for questioning, the temple will just tell the truth that Du Yu has indeed been here and don't help me cover it. As for what I have committed, I won't say anything. Now it's fortunate to be able to breathe in the fire temple. The big bearded man smiled and asked non-committently, "Or I will let the temple wish to fry a few dishes of wine and food. There is a stove behind the small temple. If you don't like my temple to wish the cooking skills, you can ask him to buy some from the town. After supper I know a few fly restaurants, good craftsmanship, cheap and good quality." Du Yu hurriedly waved his hand. "It is better to do less than to do more. Just drink it." Looking at the exhausted monk in front of him, the bearded man stroked his beard and smiled. "They are all the gods of the Sevuing realm, and are you so embarrassed?" Du Yu smiled bitterly. "After drinking I plan to go elsewhere to try my luck. If I can't, I can only go to Ao Pingzhou to avoid the limelight." The big bearded man nodded and said, "It seems that the trouble is not small. Du Yu intends to be a dead horse doctor. Take a sigh of relief here, and after leaving Sujiaking tonight he will take a trip to Duckweed Sword Lake. What if that guy named Zhou Fei with a generous shot is really the Xianxia who can make Li Jianxian remember? Back then he took care of the nursing home for Senior Qin and took care of the infant child." Someone stepped in over the wall, speaking very unconsciously, and introduced himself, but he bends around and said, "The birth of Ginger, the admiration of Ginger, it's true or false?" Du Yu cursed back at that time, "I'm your uncle Jiang Shangzhen. It's just that the only thing similar to that Jiang Shangzhen is rich." The meeting gift given to Du Yu back then was a golden strategist John. It was actually the golden Wuxia who is priceless and priceless on the mountain. What if it's really that Jiang Sangjin? On the whole continent, it is said that the female sword fairy Li Kai of Duckweed Sword Lake is not a Taoist couple, then Jiang Shangzhen is better than a Taoist couple. The problem now is that even if he can walk to the Duckweed Sword Lake alive, how to meet Li Jiangxian's face is a big trouble. The big bearded man smiled and said, "Come to me first, even if you find it right." Du was confused. The man shook the jug and the old was saying, "Qin Jianxian has been here before. It seems that he has expected something to happen today. Well, I can't say that. It is Qin Jiangxian's precaution. He asked me to help me give some words to him." As soon as he heard that it was the good senior, Du was immediately shocked and relieved. Even if he couldn't solve his urgent need when his life was the most desolate, Du seemed to just listen to a few conversations by others, and handed out a scoop of water when he was thirsty. The big bearded man laughed and said, he said, as long as it is a matter of Zhonli that makes you feel clear, you should go to the Golden Crow Palace, which is not too far away from here, and seek help from the sword fairy Lu Jiqing. If you feel that Lu Jiqing's swordsmanship is not enough. Hi, a nascent soul realm sword repairer still can't solve the trouble, so I went to the Taihui sword sect to find the Lord Lu Jinglong. If the trouble is so great that you feel that even Lu Jinglong can't get it right, let you go directly to Lidafeng and find the real fire dragon. No matter who you find, just say that your name is Du, a friend from the rivers and lakes that Qin Haoren met in Suijiaking, and you will definitely be able to drink. This is just a way. If the situation is urgent and the situation is difficult, there is another way to hold Buddha's feet temporarily. You can find someone nearby. For example, you can go to the Bone Beach to find the Phi Ma Zong on the southernmost part of a continent, and go to Mui Mountain. Look for Zhuquan or Wei Yusong, Du Wenxi and others and find any one of them. In the middle of the continent, look for Jidu Lingyuan Gong Shen Lin, or Longting Holy Yuan in addition to Yun Shangqing Shenzhenza in the southeast. Chunla Putang Shi Song Lan Xiao etc. Kaik Mansion Sun Qing Wuyu etc. are all okay. If you are not particularly anxious and can't travel far, send a letter to any of the above-mentioned mountain flying swords. Just remember to write in the envelope regarding the sender of the letter. You should use your hands and feet to find someone to pretend to be, so that the secret letter will not be left on the side and delay things in vain. Qin Jianxian also said something. The reason why he didn't leave you a letter through Ghost Axe Palace with these things was because he was worried that it would stretch your courage and it would not be a good thing for you. Like you always do. That way it's good to be courageous and walk the rivers and lakes as much as possible so you can try not to cause trouble. So Qin Jianxian finally drank and said with me a smile, I hope I won't have a chance to tell you this, but if there is such a day it would be like seeing you today. Do also let you not be afraid of things and rely on friends when you go out. Anyway, his friend is your friend of Du. Looking at the dumbfounded fool, the big bearded man laughed and said, I'm dumbfounded? Normally I also think Qin Jianxian is telling a joke. To say that he knew Lu Jianxian of the Golden Crow Palace, the sect master Lu of the Taihui sword sect, he believed. But if you go to Potty Peak, you only need to report your name and you can ask the real fire dragon to help. I really don't believe it. Do you think you are the great master of Dragon Tiger Mountain? Or the master Wenxing who stopped Beiju Luzhou's cross-sea sword repair? Or is your kid very familiar with Zhao Tianshi and Wenxing? But the old man at the wine table is still a young sword fairy, drinking some wine, talking big, bragging and not breaking the law. Du swallowed and asked, that good senior, what is his last name? The bearded man was a little speechless. He was stunned. He pointed to the soldier cultivator in front of him and said angrily, you are really a talent. After staying with that sword fairy for so long, he has the same virtue as himself, only knowing the other surname is Qin. You and the young sword fairy are a real tribulation together. Back then there was such a big commotion in Suijia town, and it all took over the catastrophe. Du was a little embarrassed. He really didn't know more. The senior sword fairy walked the rivers and lakes, and liked to call himself Good Man Qin. In the early years, a girl named Xing Qian and a scholar named Li Huai seemed to have gone to the Ghost Axe Palace to find themselves, but Du was not on the mountain at the time. Later I heard about it and didn't think much about it. Later there was a young woman with the same name and surname. In the Daoist dynasty of China, there were 4 rounds of boxing with Cao Ci. Of course, Du had heard some gossip about the arena, but didn't think much about it. Otherwise, why do you still make Du think? Is that Zheng Qian who can challenge Cao Ci, or the girl who has taken the initiative to find herself? Du finished drinking a pot of wine, courageous and left with a fist. The bearded man didn't hold him back either. He smiled with a fist. Good trip. Remember to come back for a drink when you have time. You can get 3 sticks of incense. After quietly leaving Suijia town, Du tried his best to choose those inaccessible wilderness and ridges along the way, bypassing many mountain sects and Xianxia ferry crossings, and finally reached the gate of Jinwu Palace Mountain. Du bit his scalp and self-registered, Ghost Palace Du, please see Lu Jianxian. The monk in the concierge knows the Ghost Axe Palace and this military monk named Du. After all, Du's parents are the sons of the pair of mountain Taoists in the kingdom of Jinduo, but they have only heard of it. Brother Jinwu Palace smiled and said, even if your parents are here, you want see our Uncle Lu. The master uncle in my own family can't be seen by anyone who wants to. It is universally acknowledged that the Yuan Ying realm sword fairy in Luzhou, Beiju, is of heavier weight, second only to the Yuan-Ing realm sword repair of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and it is not mixed with water. The porter monk waved his hand and said, "Do you let's go, don't be boring and don't make me scolded." Uncle Lu Shi is notoriously weak in temperament and far away from the world. Except in his early years on the Xianxia side of Chunlu Garden, he met a young sword fairy from a foreign country. The relationship between the two parties is very good. Besides, there are almost no friends on the mountain. Perhaps Sect Master Lu of Taihui Jianzong had to be counted as one. Uncle Master had visited Pianran Peak and it was rumored that both parties had drunk. Of course they lost. Sect Master Liu's drinking capacity is invincible and everyone knows it. Therefore, let alone Du, the mountain relationship of the palace lord of the Ghost Axe Palace can't reach his Uncle Lu. Du scratched his head anxiously. "This fairy teacher, help, I have a friend who is Lu Jiangxian's friend, so I can come to Lu Jianxian if I have something to do." The concierge said with a smile, "I have a friend of a friend's friend who knows a disciple of Zixuanfeng's line, and this Taoist priest is Yuan Zhenjun's disciple, then I am friends with Yuan Zhenjuan." Du was really gone. Just about to open his voice and call Lu Jiqing's name, the concierge raised his hand and pointed to the lightning thundercloud in the sky. He smiled and reminded, "Du, please don't be a fool. The rules of our Golden Crow Palace are all over there." Du walked out a few steps, turned his head and looked around. He didn't even know that Lu Jianxian was practicing on the top of the Golden Crow Palace, and he didn't want to leave. So he squatted far on the roadside and slapped himself severely, making you like to be nosy. Without the skills of Senior Chen, he prefers to be strong and do good deeds. If it doesn't work, I can only take a trip to the Duckweed Sword Lake. I am afraid of repeating the same mistakes and continue to eat closed doors. A ray of sword light quietly left the top of the Golden Crow Palace, came to Du Ye's side and asked, "Are you Du?" Du raised his head with a dazed look. The young man came with a golden hairpin on his head and was wearing a white jade robe. Du wondered, "Are you? Is it a direct disciple of the Golden Crow Palace who passed the mountain gate?" The man opened the door and said, "My name is Lu Jiqing and I am the one you are looking for." Du hurriedly got up and was about to say something polite. Lu Jiqing had already said, "Let's talk, I want to find someone and which mountain to trouble." Du was stunned on the spot. Did this Lu Jianxian not ask what happened? "Since you are Qin Pingan's friend, I can trust you." About Mo was to see through Du Ye's mind. Lu Jiqing twitched at the corner of his mouth, probably even smiling. "Since you are willing to come to me, you can trust my swordsmanship, so just lead the way." For so many years Du has been wandering around the rivers and lakes. During this period he has only returned to the Ghost Axe Palace twice, once for the Mountain Gate celebration and once for the birthday of his mother. Du has always been uninterested in the feats and deeds of the mountain. Anyway, they are all things that are beyond my reach. It's good to be confused by my own affairs. Could it be that the real name of the good man Qin's senior sword immortal is Qin Pingan? The name is not too silly, but it's good. It's just why in Beiju Luzhou, it seems that you have never heard of this name. No matter how many sword repairs in Beiju Luzhou, no matter how much sword repair is like a cloud, with the realm and swordsmanship of Senior Qin, Du is no longer lazy to spend money on the Shanshui Mansion report and no longer likes to go to Xianxia Ferry. How could he have heard of it? Anyway, Du didn't plan to get close to the gods on the mountain in his life. What did Lao Tzu spend the wrong money for? Is it good to drink flower wine? Although Du would still take the Xianxia Ferry once in a while, he just lived in the cheapest room. Apart from the ferry fee, there would never be any additional expenses. He wanted to earn my ferry money and dreamed about it. A snowflake money is 1,000 taels of silver. I can't be a rich man in any country at the foot of the mountain. Du asked cautiously, "Lu Jianxian Senior Qin mentioned me?" Lu Jiqing nodded. "Of course, you are his friend and saved him." Having said that, Lu Jiqing couldn't help but take a closer look at Du, the one who saved Qin Pingan. If this were to be spread out, it would only be said that in the northern province of Luzhou, where swordsmanship is like a cloud, this Ghost Axe Palace soldier monk has a lot of amulets and life-saving charms. The only problem is that those sword repairmen who have been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi may not be willing to believe that a soldier monk in the Sevuing realm will save the life of the hermit. No matter how thick Du Ye's face is, he can't suffer live. Where does Senior Qin need him to save? He had a brain fever that year and went to meet Senior Qin, who was recovering from his injuries. Qin Jianxian is also true. On his friend's side, he is willing to say that there are none and he is not afraid of being laughed at by his friends. But it's also right, it seems to be something good seniors would do. I'm afraid this is why I was able to meet Xianxia in the rivers and lakes under the mountain. Lu Jiqing asked, is it a disaster caused by meddling? Du was a little embarrassed and hummed softly. Lu Jiqing squinted his eyes and patted Du on the shoulder. Very well, starting from today, welcome to come here as a guest. Du was both frustrated and honored, so he had to say politely, don't dare. Lu Jiqing, huh? Du immediately saw the wind and the rudder. Dare, why not dare? Lu Jianxian dare to recognize me as a friend, why don't I dare to climb Lu Jianxian? Lu Jiqing endured it. Very good, at first glance it is Qin Pinggan's quack friend. Afterwards, Du and Lu Jiqing explained the cause of the trouble, which was related to the wealthy Qianglin sect. Money can help God Qianglin for so many years, under the guise of hunting down the remnants of the wild monsters, hunting down the mountains and the spirits, various mountains and waters, selling for profit and earning a lot of money like that Tongyi's house Xiaolong compared with Qiu's creation of a wild garden. It is nothing short of inferior with awkward methods and almost no profit. Qianglin mountain allies and business partners are all over one continent. And the more shallow the mountaintop sect, the more cross-country, the more fierce the money-making methods are. Moreover, gathering people in groups by type will be the first to look at Qianglin. It is conceivable that the Mountain Immortal Mansion and the Jianghu School are all things that can't come out of the eyes of money. Therefore, many local monster monks who are indisputable in the world have been hurt by the fish. But the Qianglin monks have hidden their tricks and shot so fast, it's hard to be caught by outsiders. It happened that Du was floating on the rivers and lakes, and he met one of the demonic monks of the lower 5 realms. He was a simple-minded young man. He guarded a townhouse all the year round. He occasionally went to the Sky Bridge to hear about books and go shopping. In fact, that little spirit just within a few years of the successful refining, Du rescued the boy twice. With the golden crow armor on his body, he prevented 2 groups of monks from chasing after him. In the end, he could not save the boy. Because for the last time, a protagonist of Qianglin Patriarch Tang's protagonist appeared in person. He was an extremely young Jindan Dixian. I heard that he was the proud disciple of Qianglin Patriarch, if it weren't for the other party's fear of Du. Du, who had been splashed with a big bucket of dirty water, couldn't escape that walnut. The young Jindan was meticulous in his thoughts and acted fiercely. He had already arranged the roots and feet of the little spirit and the evidence of sheltering a wild monster race. The little spirit had no experience in the arena, and he didn't want to hurt Du, so he was stupid and took the initiative to plead guilty. Now he doesn't know his life or death. Du only knows that the boy was taken to a hill where the Qianglin clan belongs to. Du felt that this was wrong and there was no such reason in the world. In that battle, the wild world did not reach Luzhou in North Ju, and was blocked by the Dali cavalry in the middle of Aquarius Island. There were indeed some wild monster monks running around, but Taihui Sword Sect and Duckweed Sword Lake, the monks including King Liangzong, had been tightly guarded on the coastal boundaries of a continent. Du's eyes reddened when he thought of this. It is not only his own experience, but also affects his parents and Ghost Axe Palace. That guy once threatened to go to Ghost Axe Palace in person. On the way to escape, Du occasionally regretted it. He had known that he would not be in a mess and be a good person. So what kind of friend Lu Jianxian said today? Du felt quite uncomfortable. With such a low level and such a bad temperament, Jianxian is willing to make friends with such a friend, and Du have no face to admit. It's Qianglin. Then I have to call 1 or 2 swordsmen to go with him. Lu Jiqing squinted his eyes and said, it is not difficult for me to openly ask the sword in my current state. It is difficult to cut down to the other party's patriarch hall. Du was frightened when he heard it. In fact, he was just asking for justice. Just let Qianglin let go of that spirit. It's best to let that young earth fairy stop pestering him, and Qianglin should not take revenge on Ghost Axe Palace afterwards. Otherwise, with Qianglin vast magical powers, you only need to be secretive, and Ghost Axe Palace will be in trouble within a few years, and it will be like a mountain. Lu Jiqing clearly knew Du's thoughts and said, Du, you don't need to show up to ask the sword. The matter will definitely be solved for you. As long as the little spirit is not dead for a while, it will definitely be saved, but if it is already dead, just ask for justice for you. For this you have to be mentally prepared. Besides, if there are any sequelae, just leave it to Qin Pinggan to solve it. He is best at cleaning up mess. I can guarantee him that he will never hurt Ghost Axe Palace. Du shook his head and said tentatively, you really don't need to ask the sword. As long as Lu Jianxian helps to plead, I don't want to come to Qiongling Zone to forcefully leave behind a ghost of the lower 5 realms. I'm willing to spend money at that time. I don't want to have a hard time going around and intercede with Qiongling Zone. Lu Jiqing said, those with a low level will listen to those with a high level. Du felt helpless. The sword immortal was the sword immortal and his words were domineering. Seeing Du taking it seriously, Lu Jiqing explained, it's a joke. Du had no choice but to say, the younger generation can hear it. Lu Jiqing said, don't worry, I won't act recklessly. After that, Lu Jiqing took Du back to his mountain and asked Du to wait for a while. Lu Jiqing sent 2 letters to the Duckweed Sword Lake and Taihui Sword Sect respectively. After embarking on the boat, Lu Jiqing reminded, Du, we are going to 2 places next. During this period you should consolidate your qi to heal your wounds. Don't be distracted. During this period of time let's run away in a hurry. Your mind is a little damaged. If you don't pay attention it will become a flaw in the Tao mind. In the future, whether it is to condense a pill or to conceive a nascent infant, you will have a lot of trouble. The sky is difficult. It is said that the heart demon is like a spring grass, which grows in the gap between the heart and mind, and can ventilate with the heart and mountains. Unknowingly it will occupy the magpie's nest. If the heart demon continues to be nourished, it will eventually become a tall one. The demon is a 10-foot tall transfiguration demon. Therefore, the more old Yuanying, the more reclusive, the more sitting and the more dead, the easier it is to decay in form and spirit, and the root cause is here. Lu Jiqing handed Du a porcelain bottle with a few immortal pill that calmed the nerves. It was not a good elixir. It was the standard equipment passed down by the ancestor of the Golden Crow Palace. Lu Jiqing said, every time you take the next one. After the medicine is taken, you will converge your mind and breathe in silently, and strive to finish the absorption of the pill's spiritual energy within 1 big week of operation, and turn it into the spiritual spring deposits of your natal qi palace. While breathing on the ferry, Du became dizzy and suddenly heard Lu Jiqing say, here. Du opened his eyes and looked down at a lake with many islands, such as blue snails in a jasper plate. Lu Jiqing found Rong Chong, a major disciple of Duckweed Jianhu, a sword repairman in the Yuanying realm, and roughly explained his intentions. Rong Chong quickly went to Master to ask for instructions. After returning, he smiled and said, Master readily agreed, saying that she is now in a sparse state and has no face to go out. Just let me walk with you. But Master said that you are not old-fashioned in doing things. There is such a blatant question to Jian Xiu from the ancestors of Jianbai's family. This kind of activity is too careless. Beating people without slaps in the face. It is more slapped than slashing the ancestors. A little spirit, life-saving, he went to Qionglinzong to collect debts, used blind eyes and quietly touched the Qionglinzong Patriarch Hall, saving a few swords to cut through the mountain and water prohibition. We arrived near the Patriarch Hall before we handed the sword. Cover his face and report a brave feat such as, I am the first man of the sword immortal in the north by Chong, and ran away after the cut. In fact, Master's original words are not diarrhea but diarrhea. It's just this kind of remarks Master said right and wrong. Of course Rong Chong, who is a big disciple, has to be subtle. Lu Jiqing nodded and said, teached. In this kind of thing the Golden Crow Palace's experience is indeed inferior to yours. Rong Chong smiled knowingly. In Beiju Luzhou of course it is a good word from the top. You didn't even know the sacredness of the tall and gracious man in front of him. However, listening to the tone of the dialogue between the two sides, it must be a senior on the mountain who does not lose the realm of Lu Jianxian. Otherwise, who is full and holding on, often asks Jian a sect. Rong Chong turned his head to hold a fist and smiled at Du Yu, fortunately meeting. Du Yu quickly tremblingly clasped his fists in return. 3 people came soon. Among them was a beautiful woman who called herself Sui. There is also a pair of teenagers and girls who are like people on the painting. A bunch of people looked at Du Yu together. Show Du Yu a little hairy. Qinli asked, Big brother, can we be together? Rong Chong said helplessly, you have to ask Master first. One by one they were all Master's baby bumps. There was a slight accident outside the sect. He, a senior brother, couldn't afford it and Master's temper could make him shit. What's more, Master's temperament in recent years is really not very good. The boy put his hands around his chest. Master clearly knows that we will follow. Since there is no additional reminder of the senior brother, he must have agreed. Among the direct disciples collected by Li Kai in Benzhou, Duckweed Sword Lake has the best swordsmanship and is also Li Kai's favorite apprentice. Now he is named Sui Jingqing, but on the top of the Zhu Shitang's landscape genealogy, there is another old one. Name it. The hidden official Qin Li, Gao Yi his sister, Gao Yuqing. Qin Li is now a sword repairer in the Golden Core realm. Unlike Bai Xian's self-proclaimed Little Hermit, Qin Li's nickname was given by the senior sword repairman in his hometown. It's on an innocent sign in a wine shop. Qin Li, the saber is awkward and the flying sword is wailing. 100-year-old sword fairy is at your fingertips. As for Gao Yuqing, in fact he was also a Longmen realm sword repairman. Only with Qin Li by her side she pales in comparison. Otherwise, Gao Yuqing is a well-deserved genius of kendo in any sect of kendo in Haoran world. In the words of Master Li Kai, that is, Rong Chong, your senior brother is really energetic, waiting eagerly to be equalized by the juniors and sisters one by one. In the end, Rong Chong asked Master what he meant. Li Kai didn't bother to speak, just cast a look at Rong Chong. Rong Chong nodded, no need to talk nonsense. The group of people on the rune boat of Lu Jiqing had already made an appointment with Lu Jinglong of Tai Hui Sword Sect, and they met at the top of the Qianglin Sect Vassal Hill. Lu Jiqing and Rong Chong chatted. I plan to ask the sword to end, and I will go to the wild battlefield to find opportunities to break through. The monks in Jingwu Palace have never been to the Great Wall of Jianqi. At first there were very few sword repairs and Lu Jiqing had broken through the Golden Core realm for a few years, and he really didn't want to be on the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. He also needed the local sword to repair the road over there, not a disservice. Rong Chong smiled and said, it's a good thing. Gao Yuqing had been looking at the military cultivator and couldn't believe what Lu Jiqing said, and asked in his heart, Brother, do you think this person really saved the hermit? On the fierce battlefield like the Great Wall of Jianqi, there are only young hidden officials who can save others. Qin Li thought for a while, nodded and said, judging by the time the encounter between Lord Hidden Officer and Duyu was between the first time he returned home from the Great Wall of Jianqi and his second visit to the Great Wall of Jianqi as a hidden officer. The hidden officer is not yet a sword repairman, so it is possible. In fact, it is not possible, it is certain. Hermit-sama will definitely not be joking about this kind of thing. Sui Jingqing smiled and asked, Master Du, who do you think is the most powerful and famous in the sword repairs in the Great Wall of Sword Qi? Duyu quickly said, who else can it be? Of course it is the hidden official who is said to be from Aquarius Island. Once passing by a Xianxia ferry crossing by accident, I found a copy of the Immortal Swordsman's imprint, including a seal which made Duyu the most famous in the case and he will never tire of it. Let 3 tricks. Aha, there is such a coincidental and interesting thing in the world, and Duyu almost laughed so much that his stomach hurts. To the south of Dongbeiping's house, such a small place, Haoran Jiuzhou has the smallest territory, but it is the place where Haoran 8 continents are the most admired heroes. There is a gossip on the rivers and lakes. It first came from the steward of a transcontinental ferry in Beiju Luzhou. The old steward said that the youngest hidden official in the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Yushu Lin Feng, ruthless, kills without blinking. In the first meeting of the upside-down mountain Chunban's High, the young man who hung a hidden official badge finally appeared. The sword Immortal and the steward sat face to face, but the two groups of people didn't talk a few words and they didn't agree with each other. The hidden official gave an order in the hall. As a result, more than 20 transcontinental ferry stewards were half done on the spot. Fate, there's no way to fight back. Believe it or not. Anyway, I was there and I tried my best to save 2 friends. The young hidden officer, I was the most loyal, so he admired me. Heroes, no fight, no acquaintance, happy arms and words. The hidden officer sat next to me and his head fell on the ground. The blood-stained land, each drinking. Nowadays the place where young hidden officials is the most touted in the world is probably not Aquarius, but Beiju Luzhou, which has distinct love and hatred. The old-fashioned young Jian Xiu smiled and nodded slightly. The girl blinked. Isn't the Master Zhou Xian in front of him a fool? Although Duyu was puzzled, he did not dare to ask more. Qin Li smiled and said, have a chance get to know each other? Duyu waved his hand quickly, how can I have this fate? A large number of sword repairmen from different hometowns successively met at the Xianxia near the entrance of a mineral vein. The female sword immortal of Ia's house, Xianxia, two disciples respectively named Chaomu Zhu Xing, a pair of young girls, one carrying a bamboo box and one holding a green bamboo stick. Jin Jezhou Songpin, who is also a female sword fairy, also accepted two children from the Great Wall of Sword Qi as heirs, but they were both girls named Sun Zhao and Jin Luang. There is also a Yupu realm sword repaired in Yue, with two new disciples Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting. In Luxiazu, the old Jianxiu who fell in the Great Wall of Jianqi, He is now in Yuaning state. The old man also took two children from the Great Wall of Jianqi, the young Yedu and the girl Xuezhou. At this moment He was scolding a fellow Jianxiu who had just arrived at the inn. Yeah, this is not Situ Jiu, the great sword immortal with outstanding military exploits. Rare visitors, if I remember correctly, our hidden officer only invited me and Songpin to come out of the mountain this time, but we didn't invite you here. Come by myself. As the only nascent soul stage, just shut up and don't talk to Yupu Jianxiu. The Hermit Lord saw you most admiringly. He is really kind. I'm afraid that your qualifications will delay Situ great sword immortal's step into the ascendant realm. You are not willing to accept your apprentice. No wonder you speak so aggressively. Come, I will punish you for a bowl. If Situ Dajiangxian is still unsatisfied, I will kneel on the ground and give you a toast to the elderly. In fact, there are several old Jianxiu from various continents who have never been to the Great Wall of Jianqi in the house, all of whom are Xie Songhua and the others on the mountain who know the roots and have the same temperament. It's just that they are squeezed in this room today and they have no turn to speak at all. In fact, before Situ Jiu arrived, Yu had already been scolded by He, pointing to the nose to curse. And Xie Songhua also feels that Yu is a bit untrue, and she has the face to run to the Luopa mountain to dig for the foot of the wall, and even swiftly ascends first to find an enshrined status. Why don't you Lao Jianxian simply ask for a deputy chief Dang Dang? This made Lao Jianxian Yu, who originally wanted to show off to Lao Pu, wanted to dig a hole in. You must know that Yu had been to the Great Wall of Jianqi battlefield anyway. All the remaining 6 or 7 Hauran-old Jianxiu simply did not dare to breathe, watching their noses and hearts one by one, each silently drinking tea. It's not that there are no old people who want a polite greeting. After all, there are some sword immortals who have never been masked, but have long heard of famous names such as Xie Songhua from the Aizhou Island. Only soon they discovered that whether it was Xie Songhua who was rumored to have killed a Yupu realm sword repair demon clan in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, or Songpin who was extremely beautiful and carried a swinging sword, they were too lazy to talk to anyone. In addition, these old people from their hometowns who would be called sword fairy, are indeed curious about the sword fairies of the same age. It is a pity that Li Kai, a female sword fairy from Luzhou in Beiju, did not come. I heard that she had accepted 2 disciples and she was also very qualified. One of them even had the nickname of the Little Hermit. Almost everyone is here. Let me talk about the meaning of Lord Hermit. Songpin suddenly said, in fact it's the same thing. Whoever makes money, how to make money, don't care about it, but if anyone has the thoughts and actions of I can't get it, no one wants it, then do it. He smiled while stroking his beard. It must be the original words of the hidden officer. Songpin smiled and said, actually the original words of the hidden official are to let us be reasonable. Puha immediately clapped his hands and exclaimed, the original words are better. Situ Jiu couldn't help cursing. Why didn't you kneel at the entrance of the summer palace? Puhi sneered and said, I have fallen and I have to heal my wounds, otherwise I will definitely have a place in the summer palace. Unlike some people who fish on the battlefield. Yu always felt that Pu Lauer was scolding himself. Xie Songhua smiled and said, being able to pick up rags on the battlefield is also a craft. Songpin took the lead to get up and said calmly, leave. At the curtain of the sky, a sage who was in charge of the saint in Tongyi's Hao, nodded with the swordsman in the blue shirt and said, the Saint of Rites once instructed to allow the hermit to go to the colorful world within Jiazi without consumption. Battle exploits. But I don't need to take the initiative to remind the hermit. It will be invalidated after expiration. Qin Pingon thanked him and then was about to ask about it. The sage of the Confucian temple had already laughed first. Is anyone going to swim with the hermit? Why didn't I see it? At this moment, beside Qin Pingon, there was actually an entourage with a yellow hat, blue shoes and green bamboo stick standing next to him. Qin Pingon understands. Xiao Imo changed his body in an instant. and a snow-white spider lay on the shoulder of the green shirt. The sage of the Confucian temple smiled and remember not to stay too long. Qin Pingon nodded and said, "It will be the beginning of spring in a few days. The juniors will definitely go back quickly." Qin Pingon lowered his head and glanced at the mountains and rivers of the earth. Converging his thoughts, his blue shirt and big sleeves swayed in the wind and stepped into the gate. The old man gave a secret applause and the young man had a good demeanor. The bottom of the sleeves has the color of the sea, and the brows are blue to see the marks of the sky. A colorful world soaring to the city. Someone revisits the old place and it is also regarded as hometown in a foreign country. Sort of coming Chapter 9-11. The upload is too late. Flying City. Business in the wine shop was good today and two groups of people came to the front and back. As soon as the bachelors including Fan Dach and Wang Xinshui took their seats, several women including Situ Longqiu and Luo Zhini came. Without having to look at Jing Dafeng, the shopkeeper, Fan Dach and the others took the initiative to give the latter the last seat at the wine table, obediently go to the side of the road and squat to drink, and listen to some stories about the gods fighting on the bed with their Dafeng brothers. Never thought that Jing Dafeng had gone to sit down beside the wine table. An old Jindanjian Xiu sitting on the side of the roadside. This old bachelor who is not young can drink a bowl of wine for a long time. Every time I hear the story of Jing Dafeng, there is at least a bowl of wine left. Most of the bowl, pricked up my ears and heard of the treasurer. The old man came along and sighed with emotion. He never thought that the old man would hear these things in this life of cleanliness and self-care. After Jing Dafeng took his seat he was already sitting on the edge of the long stool. A female Jianxiu still got up immediately and turned to squeeze a stool with two friends. Jing Dafeng lifted his hips silently and slid along the bench. It was warm. Before drinking, Dafeng's brother felt warm. When the woman saw this scene her eyebrows were drooped, but the thought of cursing was useless. Maybe it would only make him worse and she said something strange so she raised her drinking bowl and drank a long mouthful of boring wine. Sitting opposite Jing Dafeng, it happened to be the female sword repairer of the hidden official line of the Summer Palace, Luo Zhini. The woman's face, figure, temperament and kendo realm are nothing to say. Look left and right, front and back. Anyway, you look seductive. Probably the Luo Zhini in the eyes of the young man in Feixingcheng is Song Kaiyun and Zhou Qing in the eyes of the old man at the Great Wall of Jianqi. Our acting shopkeeper Jing Dafeng, not long after he first came to take over the wine shop, relying on only 3 things, quickly gained a foothold in the Great Wall of Jianqi. The appearance of thick eyebrows and big eyes, Yushu breeze, good gambling on the wine table and 2 lists are made every few years. The top 10 fairies and 10 beautiful embryos are selected all in one go. Once every 2 or 3 years Luo Zhini ranks in the top 3 of the top 10 fairies every time. As for the Dong Bu who didn't come to drink today, he was selected twice. The ranking was fluctuating and the gap was relatively large. The first time he ranked bottom, the second time he directly broke into the top 3. However, Miss Dong has been selected as the top candidate by Jing Dafeng for the next selection that is about to be released. No way, before Guizhujiu left Wuxia Xianxia, he secretly gave a sum of money to the gods, saying that an old girl must be first this time, otherwise he really couldn't get married. The little girl also has the style of the heroine who does good things without leaving her name. She repeatedly told the shopkeeper, "Don't say it is her credit, the old girl really wants to ask, just say that it was the money that Deng Liang and Deng paid." Sidu Longqiu asked, "I heard that the hidden official said that there is a place called Yendang Mountain on Aquarius Island which has a very good scenery. What else will it be? The mountain of the prince?" Before she and 2 boudoir friends asked Qin Pingon for tripartite seals. Her collection of book seals was related to a place called Dalongqiu in Yendang Mountain. Jing Dafeng nodded and said, "The scenery is really great. I have a chance to go and see it. Next time Brother Dafeng will help lead the way." "Miss Situ, don't you know that there are many scholars in the world but there are few serious people like Brother Dafeng?" Situ Longqiu is the concubine of the Situ family on Taixiang Street. Before the war she was only a sword repair at the bottleneck of the sea view. He broke through the city in this flying city, and then went out to experience the golden core in the colorful world. She and Dong must not be friends in the boudoir who talklessly talk. Among the younger generation of the Great Wall of Sword Chi, Situ Longqiu is not a genius, but the popularity is very good. As a result, she got a nickname inexplicably a few years ago. The name is a bit long and she was said to be a landscape mansion on the Great Wall of Sword Chi. The nickname spread throughout the entire ascended city at once. and it is said that it was first accidentally spread from the Summer Palace. In fact, it was the hidden official who accidentally missed his mouth in his early years. The famous doglegs in the Summer Palace were amazed by it and screamed at the case. After coming and going, it gradually spread. In addition, there is a Dong Bu in the Summer Palace. Can he hide his words? Guizhujiu as a disciple is not in Xianxia, so of course she has to do it. Since the father pays attention to repaying the debts, it is even more logical to pay the debts of the teacher and the disciples. If there are any inexplicable and unsolvable grievances, I will come to me if I have the ability. So Guizhujiu's end is dong dong dong. Xing Dafeng asked suddenly, Miss Situ, what do you think of Dafeng brothers? Situ Longqiu glanced at the man and said, I don't know if it's useful, but I don't see it anyway. How can Xing Dafeng dislike such a girl, such a flying city? Is really no different from hometown. Xing Dafeng raised his wine bowl. A beautiful woman can't believe it when she speaks, so she can listen to it as an irony. Luo Zhini gently stepped on his friend's foot under the wine table. The woman named Guanmei glanced at her friend and asked with a smile to Xing Dafeng. On behalf of the shopkeeper, Ningyao returned from Hao Rantian, but did not bring back any news? For example, Lin Junbai and the others returned to their hometown. How's it going? On the way, Luo Zhini asked her to help Xing Dafeng to ask about one thing, saying that she wanted to know what happened to the sword repair in the Summer Palace. Guanmei has a good impression of Xing Dafeng. Her speech is funny and her temper is good. No matter who says it, he is not angry. He talks a little bit too much. Whenever she sees a woman with a good figure, she has to show her brilliance. But this, the shopkeeper of the small wine shop, is never frivolous. Xing Dafeng rubbed his chin, looking embarrassed. Calling for the shopkeeper, I was so distressed that I couldn't speak. Guanmei leaned forward quickly, poured a bowl of wine for Xing Dafeng. Jiao Didi said, Brother Dafeng, let me talk about it, I beg you. Xing Dafeng lifted the bowl with both hands to receive the wine, craned his neck, looked at the collar of the shirt and said, Sister Guanmei, if you say that, Dafeng will be sad. Brother Dafeng, do you need to ask for it? Guanmei deliberately kept the pouring posture and sat back in no hurry. She acted like a baby, shaking her scented shoulders. Say. The old lady is willing to give up for her friends. Hey, Dafeng's brother trembled and his eyes hurt. Xing Dafeng saw the girl sitting back. Ningyao didn't say much anyway, they went to different schools and practiced separately. But it seems like the boy Lin Junbai became the national teacher of the Shaoyuan dynasty and became the youngest among the 10 dynasties of Haoran. It's not too much to say that the name moves the world. Chao Dagon is lucky. The sect is in Luxiazu. He has not been affected by the war. He is planning to open his next sect in Friazu. Maybe Chao Dagon will be able to do so. Making an exception to find a suzerain Dang Dang, Song Gaoyuan and Scrofulariaceae were nearly lucky. One of the sects is in Friazu and the other is in Jinjiazu. Now they are busy rebuilding the sect. As for repairing the old site or simply starting a new stove, I don't know. In the Summer Palace of the previous generation, the hidden official sword repairs. Qin Pingyan is a sword repairer from a foreign country. Lin Junbai, Deng Liang, Chao Dagon, Scrofulariaceae, Song Gaoyuan. Local sword repairs have troubles. Peng Yuanji, Dong Bu Guizhujiu. Gu Jianlong, Wang Xinshui, Su Ning, Luo Zhini, Chong Taiqing. Pick out one randomly and ask the sword with outsiders. It is both capable of playing and calculating. As long as the realms of the two sides are not very different, it cannot be said that the winning ticket is stable, but the chance of winning is definitely great. In Xing Dafeng's view, the two groups of young people who became hidden officials behind the sword repairers in the Summer Palace are still inferior to these predecessors. Guanmei waited for a long time and seeing that Xing Dafeng was only drinking with her head down, she wondered, is it all right? Xing Dafeng raised his head and said with a shy expression, some things can't be done with hard support. It's not a scholar who writes articles, simmering, holding back, there is always something. Guanmei was puzzled for a while, what is he shy about? It is a pity that Dong, who was not ashamed and ashamed as a child, had to be present. Otherwise she is an expert and must know Xing Dafeng's thoughts. As soon as the group of women from Situ Longqiu left, Xing Dafeng's whole body collapsed, and finally he didn't have to deliberately strain his old man's unique charm. Otherwise, these young girls who have not been involved in the world may not be able to beat them. They can't beat them, they are just a pile of love debts, they can't be committed, it's unnecessary. Xing Dafeng hurriedly turned his head and waved his hand. Hurry up, one by one is squatting in the pit, and if it is later the stool will be cold. Zheng Dafeng kicked off his boots, sat cross-legged on the bench and asked, Exen Shui, are there any girls who make you think about it and toss and turn at night? A group of bachelors pity ran to occupy the position. Wang Xinshui shook his head when he heard the words. No. Zheng Dafeng shook his head and said, if your kid spends a little time thinking about the relationship between men and women, you won't be going to mess with Fan Dach. Wang Xinshui is of course a veritable genius sword repairer. The only problem is that his mind is too fast and his premonition is so accurate that he can't keep up with the speed of handing his sword at all. This delicate situation is extremely difficult to improve. So over the years Wang Xinshui still likes to come here to drink boring wine to relieve worries. Fan Dach looked helpless and he asked me what to do. Zheng Dafeng took a sip of wine and chopsticks to serve the wine and vegetables. The salty is really salty. He quickly took a sip of wine. He turned around and asked, Che, now walking on the street I saw the kid calling you. Uncle Fan, what do you think? Fan Dach smiled and said, I don't have much thoughts, it's good. Zheng Dafeng rubbed his chin. I heard that Pang Yuanji, Lin Junbai, Chao Dagon and of course the Mi De Jiangxian, all of them were very beautiful in their skins. I don't know if I have a 70 to 80% demeanor. After Fan Dach and his party left, the setting sun went down, and there were more empty tables in the wine shop, and Zheng Dafeng lay on the counter to settle the accounts. After Zheng Dafeng took over the wine shop, the business was actually okay, the money was not less, and the level of excitement on weekdays was the only one in Feishing City. Feng Kangel and Taoban are just two little rascals. They always think that the wine shop is not as lively as it used to be, and the difference is too much. Zheng Dafeng is also really suffocated. Now the entire Ascended City, there are only a few upper 5 sword repairs and there are not many young Yuaning. This makes it difficult for clever women to cook without rice. Where can you ask me to find you a bunch of Yupu and Yuaning Jianxiu squatting on the roadside and drinking? Liquor shops are all old faces. Except for the change of the shopkeeper there are still Qiu Rang, Lu Yi, Feng Kangel and Tao Ban. It's just Zhang Jiazhen and Jiang who were taken to the world by the second shopkeeper in their early years. In fact, Qiu Long and Lu Yi have reached the age of marriage and they have been procrastinating for many years. Later, Qiu Long finally listened to the words of the shopkeeper and collected the thoughts of being far away in the sky. It is better to be nearby. Take the person in front of you. The two were married a few years ago. Qiu Long married Lu Yi and Zheng Dafeng married, of course he even took the lead in making trouble in the bridal chamber. The young couple live a stable life and plan to earn more money and save more savings. They have to open a wine shop for husband and wife. Of course they will not open in Feishingcheng. They will choose one of the 4 border vassal cities. Most likely it was the Summer City. Because it was Jian Xiu from the line of the hidden official of the Summer Palace as the city lord, he was half of his own family. The wine shop really encountered something, so there was something to take care of. Jian Xiu, who just entered the Summer Palace, will come here to have a drink. This has become a customary rule, just like worshipping the mountain. Feng Kangel and Tao Ban, the 2 teenagers who used to help with miscellaneous tasks, have now become the second hands of the wine shop. Liquor shop still only has 3 kinds of drinks: the cheap Zhuhai Dongtian wine, the expensive Qingshanshan wine, the dumb lake wine with a knife, plus a plate of pickles and a bowl of yangchun noodles for no charge. The wine bowl is as big as before and the bench is as thin as before. It's just on the wall of the wine shop in 2 rooms side by side. Those innocent cards are still the same, there is no one missing or one more. Because Zheng Dafeng came to Feishing City and became a representative shopkeeper, after the wine shop was able to reopen, there is no such thing as the tradition of someone who has drunk the wine and wrote a no wrong card. It's like a mountain closure. Since there is really nothing wrong, there is no need to write a nothing card. At the beginning there were people who had troubles, both old patrons and new drinkers, but they were all useless. Zheng Dafeng bowed his head and apologized with a smile and punished 3 bowls of himself, but there was no card, so I didn't write it. Fortunately, the second shopkeeper secretly cultivated the wine to do in his early years. Most of them helped Zheng Dafeng to speak come and go. As Zheng Dafeng is indeed a pleasing fellow, the guests gradually get used to it and stop embarrassing. This is also a foreign country. The treasurer of people and scholars. There are so many books on behalf of the shopkeeper only to talk about certain aspects of the book on the door. 2 palms the cabinet is really incomparable. In other restaurants in Feishing City, I don't know where to buy a few bottles of genuine Qingshanshan wine at a high price. They are regarded as the treasures of the town shop. Of course they also mean to fight with that small wine shop. The two are sold and soon people will go joining in after a drink. They scolded and left, almost unwilling to pay for the bill. Fake wine sell fake wine. Xianxia wine is not like this at all. One by one they were convinced and a bunch of chicks were pecking rice at the shop table and on the side of the road. The shopkeeper of the restaurant is going crazy. Until now, less than a jar of Xianxia wine has been sold, and the restaurant will not be able to collect the capital, let alone making money. Zheng Dafeng glanced at the two people on the wine table not far away, eating a bowl of yangchun noodles, but did not treat him badly, knowing to add 2 poached eggs. Today's Taoban and Feng Kangol are actually the same strong guys who can pancakes on their butts, and they both have stubble. When I was a teenager and a child, Taoban actually asked the second shopkeeper a question, and when he came to the shopkeeper Zheng Dafeng he asked another question about the same, only turning the sword fairy embryo into a Wu Shui genius. Later Taoban asked another question that made Zheng Dafeng not know how to answer. Can I still see the second shopkeeper in this life? Because Taoban knows that he is neither a sword fairy nor a martial arts wizard. He is just an ordinary person who will soon become a middle-aged person. The old man may not be able to wait until the next time the colorful world opens. Seeing that Zheng Dafeng didn't say anything at the time, Taoban muttered to herself, saying that she was young and could not drink alcohol at that time, so she had never had a drink with the second shopkeeper. In the deep twilight there was a table of drunkies who got drunk and someone laughed and said, "Brother Dafeng, you always win your money like this." From the happiness at the beginning to awkwardness to heartache, now I am almost regretful. Zheng Dafeng thought about it, nodded and said, "Well, it's almost like love between men and women." Someone suddenly chewed out some aftertaste and shouted hello. Someone asked, "On behalf of the shopkeeper, you can tell us the truth. Are you good at gambling or making trouble without washing your hands all year round?" Zheng Dafeng was too lazy to talk and raised a middle finger. Someone started talking drunkenly. "To tell the truth of the conscience, I asked the second shopkeeper a punch, he couldn't beat me twice. The second shopkeeper hasn't come back yet, no one is sitting in the bank." The Great Wall of Sword Chi used to have 2 sayings, the old and the new. The old, respectively, are the good gambling products of the dog. The old deaf child speaks human words. Lu Ji's national beauty, the hidden official's pity and love. Me yes affectionate can't keep it since ancient times. New, the young man of the second shopkeeper is not deceived and never sits in the village. Zidalonkius, I swear it is absolutely true. I see Long's rong lousy to be fair. Dong Wafa's spending is like running water. And Wang's insurance no problem before the sword, count mine after the fight. Both the old and the new, there are foreigners on the list at the same time, and the 2 guys on the list are both scholars, but there are some differences. A Liang can't wait to see gentleman scholar, and you think him not handsome because you have the look in your eyes. Question. These statements are carved on the forehead. Young hermits, on the contrary, never deliberately advertise their academic status. At the wine shop they vowed to say something with conscientiousness. I really have an average drinker. I never sit in the farm and persuade the wine to hurt the character at the table. You are a human being. You have to talk about your conscience and you have to talk about evidence. Later Fei Xingcheng, in fact there is a new saying of the 4 monsters. One is Ning Yao temporarily leads hermit, but he is not the lord of the city. Finally, as the second in command of the criminal officer, Nian Exin, whose true identity has not been able to tell why until now. I only heard that Nian Exin never speaks when discussing matters in the Patriarch Hall. Then there was Dustpan Zhai, one of the private residences of Jianxian outside the city in the past. 3 men dressed in women's dresses. Finally, the cultivators of Quanfus account room opened their eyes to picking up the money. They asked me to make money. The plaques that these monks hang in their account huts are very distinctive. What kind of heaven rewards hard work? Diligence can make up for one's weaknesses, wealth is abundant, and the sky is 3 feet high. Especially the latter 2, their fame is spreading all over the world. Because Shizhou, Shuiyu, and Jinjin, 3 immortal sword repairers, relying on a certain kind of master's magical power, the 3 masters and brothers took turns out of the city to search for the sword fairy embryos in the foreign country. And this secret method inheritance, the threshold is very high, and now only 2 of the dozens of direct disciples barely master it. Among them, Shizhou has actually been among the nascent souls. According to the will left by the master, he can already put on his normal attire. I heard that Shizhou had just put on a robes from the clothes shop in the past, and he still had time to go out to find someone to drink, but the two juniors came to the door and almost turned against him and had to continue blessed and shared. Thanks to the direct disciples collected by Shizhou and Junior Shuiyu, they asked a very good question that year. As a result, all the disciples have to wear women's dresses with the master. So these two big brothers are now the thorns of the same discipline. In fact, the term for monsters is interesting and interesting, fun and fun. I just don't know why everyone thinks it's not that interesting anymore. I always feel that something is missing. Maybe today's Feixiangcheng without the few old people who were once familiar with the sword repairs of the upper 5 realms, and the few old people with the sword spirit of the Great Wall, or it may be the 2 scholars who have received the most scolding. It's like cursing someone. If from beginning to end, you are the only one swearing with your hips akimbo, spitting and no one will return your mouth. In the end you will feel tiring. So someone has to scold it. Qing Quan and Zhou Xian, are they old swordsmen who can curse people? But the second shopkeeper, if you add them together, it's not enough. Now Qi Shou, the head of the criminal officers line, heard that he was just sitting at the head of the city and he didn't do anything or said a word. He was only injured by both sides of the quarrel and was innocent. He was almost scolded by Qing Quan. Feces. Jianqi Great Wall treated the young hidden official either like it or hated it, and there was no third kind of person. Of course there are also those who have been cheated and those who have not been cheated. There used to be a monk in Chuanfu who didn't know whether he wanted money to lose his heart, or to admire the second shopkeeper for a long time. One night, a young man sneaked up to come to the wine shop and stole the couplet from the second shopkeeper, of course. I didn't forget to carry a pair of fake couplets with me. As a result, the little thief was caught by Jing Daifeng's neck. After that, he went to the wine shop for a month of drinks before writing off the account. Jing Dafeng turned his head and looked at the street and sighed. Today's Feixing city, roughly 3 hills have been shaped. Are the 3 forces of criminal official, hidden official and Chuanfu. Ning Yao temporarily holds the position of hermit, and now the number of sword repairers in the Summer Palace has reached 20. However, in Jing Daifeng's view, a soaring city still has many hidden worries. Just talking about the hidden official line, there is a lack of a second-in-command who really convinces the public. Although Luo Zhini is a sword repairer in the nascent soul realm, and she is almost certain that she will be among the 5 realms, because of her personality, Ning Yao is not soaring. When I was in the city in the Summer Palace, I encountered endless disputes. It was difficult for someone to make a real final word. It was not that they were not smart enough, but that everyone was smart, but no one could do the well-deserved smartest. In addition, the new hidden official line of the Summer Palace can hardly be restored to the intimacy before, and the atmosphere is much deserted. For example, on the small hill that first approached the new hidden official that year, there were 6 sword repairmen. Besides Gu Zhujiao and Mi De Jiangxian, there were 4 others. Gu Jianlong and Wang Xinshui plus Chao Dang Scrofulariaceae. 2 natives and 2 foreign villages for young swordsmen, known as the 4 big doglegs of the Summer Palace, worked together to honor Gu Zhujiao as the leader of a certain gang. Today's summer residents, how could such a scene appear? After all, there is neither Qin Pingon nor Miao Jianxian. Ning Yao is the #1 person in the world and the only ascension monk in the colorful world, not to mention the sword repair. However, facing those trivial matters, it is difficult for Ning Yao to be thorough in all aspects. Moreover, this really shouldn't be what Ning Yao needs to do. In addition, the chief worshipper Deng Liang is invisible, and gradually draws up a hidden mountain. It's not that Deng Liang wants to compete with someone for power out of selfishness, but some general trend. In addition, the general trend of the world is becoming more and more clear, and there are constantly foreign monks coming to Feixiangcheng. Although there are 4 vassal cities blocked and guarded by layers, all kinds of infiltrations are endless and it is impossible to prevent. In addition, the entire ascending city has not realized one thing. Except for the handful of sword fairies on the table or all sword repairs, those who can really determine the future direction of Feixing City are actually those humble ordinary masters. Jing Dafeng knows some inside stories that ordinary sword repairers do not know. Not long ago, Ning Yao suddenly left Wuxia Tianxia with a sword, and then returned to Feixingcheng from Haoren Tianxia. She convened a meeting of the Patriarch's Hall. After Jingxiang, Ning Yao only said a few words, and was shocked by the 40 people who had seats. Qin Pingon took her Qi Tingji Lu Ji criminal officer Haosu, and by Yujing's 3 heads to teach Lu Shen, and they walked the barren hinterland together. Smashed the fairy hairpin city into 2 pieces, killed the Ascended Realm Great Demon Mysterious Garden, opened the Suyue Mountain with the sword, and killed the culprit of the Wild Great Ancestor's disciple, and a round of Mingyue Haotsai was moved to Qingming World. As for how the group of them did it and who did one of the feats, Ningyao didn't say anything and soon changed the subject and started discussing other things. Even if Jian Xiu from the hidden official line asked about it afterwards, Ningyao did not reveal the secret, only that you would ask someone in the future. Anyway, she didn't make much effort during this long journey. One of the meetings of the Patriarch Hall was about the selection of the calendar. The first year of a world, the name is Jiachuan, which was established by the Confucian Temple. Wuxia Tianxia was originally a brand new site that Confucian sages paid a great price and painstakingly opened up, so no one had any objections to it. However, the Confucian Temple did not intervene in the compilation of the almanac. Instead, it was handed over to the local forces of Wuxia Tianxia. This is not a trivial matter, especially if this almanac can pass through the world. It can occupy a share of according to the will of heaven. The precious time. In the two worlds of Haoren and Qingming, changes in celestial phenomena have been related to the rise and fall of emperors in the world since ancient times. Therefore, compiling calendars and assigning time to the heavens is a major measure known as the establishment of Xianxia. Therefore, Qintian prisons in various countries have been installed. The Arithmetic and Arithmetic Department uses arithmetic and arithmetic methods to calculate the degree of the heavens. Bai Yujing Taoist priest first released an almanac, which has been widely circulated in the colorful world. And Sui Chu Gong teamed up with Xian Du Guan and also compiled a tit-for-tat almanac. In addition, Fuya Zhu and Tongyi's His, subjugated refugees, have also released as many as a dozen different versions of their almanacs. Ning Yao suggested using the almanac compiled by Sui Chu Gong and Xuan Tu Guan in this meeting of the Patriarch Hall of the Feixing City. On the contrary, no one has any objections except for the sword repair of the hidden official line. All the members of the Patriarch Hall looked at Ning Yao one by one. Most of them looked complicated, curious and doubtful. It seems to be asking Ning Yao about something, but our hidden official? Ning Yao can't laugh or cry. Do you really treat him as omniscient and omnipotent? In the twilight, Fan Dach left the wine shop. After separating from his friends, he walked alone on the street that didn't know whether it was more lively or deserted than before. The single Jindan Jianxiu did not return to his house or go to the summer palace. Looking at the archives, I just wandered around until late at night. I returned to the door of the wine shop. It was already closed and sat at the wine table outside the door that was never accepted according to the old rules. Nianxin was sitting in a daze in a small house. The Zhushitang passed a resolution before, and she now secretly controls a new prison, which is similar to the old deaf children before. A woman who was said to be an old girl sat on the railing of the high boudoir, watching the faintly lit-up city. She held a delicate ball fan in her hand, fanning lightly, a touch of melancholy. At the time when the summer palace divided the accounts, Dong could not get the fan in his hand. The precious light was flowing and the words on the fan were beautiful. Jin Lian Lian Yu Tuan Tuan. I am stubborn, sleep in the moon palace, go to Gui Pasua, humanity is more clear. This night is the most reunion with millions of lights. If you say that young hidden officials are giving off public welfare for private purposes, it is not counted. No, it is because the hidden officials' sword repairs are all obtained by real combat achievements. Forget it, because the hidden officials have left some good things to them. People. I have been living in the summer palace all these years. Luo Zhini sitting at the table at the moment holding his cheek. There is an ancient inkstone on hand which is also a short distance away. This Fangquilong pattern moth-eaten inkstone is engraved on the top of the inkstone platform, with the seal of appreciation. The cloud is standing on the water and the text is deep. Su Ning and Chang Taiqing were drinking together elsewhere in the summer palace. The two friends talked about everything, but both intentionally or unintentionally bypassed the young hidden official. Why can a foreigner who is not a sword repairer be able to sit down? Just saying one thing, Su Ning always thinks about it and feels complicated. All the sword repairs on the Great Wall of Sword Qi in the past, and even all the people who were not sword repairs in the small streets and alleys, as long as the summer palace has archives, the young hidden official remembers it clearly. If you just remember a name and a general resume, it's nothing at all. The problem is that the hidden official is connecting everyone in a line, just to find someone who may be a wild and dark chess. Qi Shou is not in Feixing City at this moment, but standing on the head of Tuyue City with his hands folded, looking out at the sky, staring at the sky all day. In his view, some carefree genealogists on the road of practice, if they go down the mountain and have not many experiences, they may be 100 years old, and they are really just cultivating embryos. It is necessary to talk about the mind, especially the human affection and sophistication. It is estimated that they are no better than many weak men under the mountain. Fortunately, the young sword repairers who ascended to the city are growing up at an extremely rapid rate. Everyone is determined to forge ahead and is committed to opening up new territory. Sword repairers are constantly making mistakes while showing their sharp edges. Fortunately, this is a brand new world. No matter the place or time, the sword repairers of Xianxia are allowed to make mistakes. In addition, Deng Liang, the chief consecration of Ascension City from the awe-inspiring world, served as an excellent bridge. Now 8 hills have been opened up and 4 more cities have been built. With Feixing City as the center, a circle of mountains and rivers with a radius of thousands of miles is drawn. In addition, there are 4 enclaves that are extremely far away from Feixing City. They have gained a firm foothold. Those who are stationed in the sword repairs have not handed swords to outsiders for 2 full years. Qi Shou suddenly patted the brand new city wall, narrowed his eyes and smiled. Finally, they are all new. The Qin family mansion on Taishan Street. A young man named Qin Ji, who had nothing to do with him, looked at a scholar's note in the study, which was bought by Yuanyu Jianxiu at a low price from the remnants of Tongyi's Hao. There is a close-knit maid standing silently in the house, but she has recently entered the Yupu realm from the Yuanying realm back then. So Qin Ji, who had been stuck in the nascent soul realm, took a Yupu realm sword repair as his major disciple in this life. Give the surname Qin the name Hui. Oh, the last day of each month means that she can stay high and far and truly achieve long-term vision, so she can stay in Feixing City and become a backup at a certain critical moment. Qin Ji or Qin Shi in the previous life, after the reincarnation of the soldiers, used secret methods to make up for his soul and soul. Since his soul has changed, his temperament will inevitably change, so he is not particularly anxious to become the first lord of Ascension City. I just hope that Qi Shou or someone can carry the burden. As for Ning Yao, forget it, she definitely won't be a city lord. In fact, in today's Ascension City, many sword repairmen would fight for the old sword fairy Qin Shi. If it weren't for beheading an ascended great demon empress, Qin Shi was trapped in a siege and was led by 2 old thrown great demon and a large group of wild monks to death. In the end, after beheading another sword repairman in the Jade Purity realm, he had to be disbanded. Then Qin Shi could become the first sword repairman in the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi with 2 engravings. Qin Ji certainly doesn't care about this kind of thing. One of the 8 vassal hills outside the city, Zifu Mountain. Deng Liang stood in front of an ancient stone tablet, looking at the 2 lines of ancient seal script. 6 Dong Danxiao Profound Book, Sanqing Zifu Green Chapter. Take out a jade box from the sleeve and it will be completely refined soon. If no accident, you can touch the bottleneck threshold of the Jade Pu realm. This is the Dao Yuan of Xianxia and Xian. It seems that this mountain has been silently waiting for Deng Liang for thousands of years. Therefore, Deng Liang has cultivated here in recent years. A certain woman named No, since she couldn't ask for it, she didn't ask for it. Deng Liang entered the colorful world in the 7th year of Jiachuan, and served as the chief worshipper of Feixing City. At that time, Qi Shou also happened to be in the Yupu realm, but Gao Yu was still in the Yuanying realm. Deng Liang turned and left, taking a walk in the Zifu mountain. The 5th world is too big and there are too few people entering this new world. It's like a huge lake just thrown into a few baskets of fish. Go to a tree, squat down on the ground and pick up a fallen leaf. Deciduous tree from abroad. Missing is like falling leaves on the ground, all looks the same but in fact they are all different. The shopkeeper said it well. Unrequited love, like a hanged self-hanging rope, is thoughts, and the beam above his head is the sweetheart who can't ask for it. All unrequited lovesickness who have never fulfilled their wishes are hanged ghosts that never leave. Not scary, not harmful, only annoying, only worrying. Gao Yeho is now a sword repairman in the Yupu realm. Chuanfu merged the sword workshop Yifang Danfang of the Great Wall of Sword Qi in the past, and Gao Yeho became the well-deserved god of wealth in Feixing City. However, Gao Yeho didn't intervene in specific affairs. The monks in Quanfus family were mostly young people selected from the Yen family and the Nalan family who were really in charge of money and affairs. Among them, the number of sword repairers was small and the qualifications were average. Otherwise, it is not enough to come to Quan Mansion to make a plan. About it is to turn grief and anger into strength. Compared with ordinary Spring Mansion members, they have to pay more attention to the account book. Inside the spring house, the lights were brightly lit, and Gao Yeho was sitting in her own account. He missed his sister a little. I don't know if she practiced smoothly at the Duckweed Sword Lake in Luzhou, Beiju, and whether she has found her favorite Realang. Just thinking of the fact that Fei Xingcheng would prepare for the establishment of a college, Takano Ho was a little annoyed. It was not a money issue at all, so it was troublesome. In the night, at the southernmost city of the vassal, 2 monks from other villages came, a middle-aged man in a blue shirt and long gown and shoes, and a young man in a yellow hat, green shirt and green bamboo staff. There is a stall at the gate of the city. There is nothing to say about the colorful world today, but in accordance with the rules set by Feishing City, all visitors must sit down here and write clearly their origin, name, road number, and hometown. Hometown, under the mountain, the more detailed the better, anyway no less than 300 words more is better even if the hour is written. It is also considered skill, the number of words is more, and you can drink a pot of wine prepared long ago like that. The summer city to the north is a pot of Dumb Lake wine. Here it is the wine made by the Yen family. Behind the stall on a bench sat 2 young sword cultivators, 1 male and 1 female, not high in realm, and one of them was not even a middle 5 cultivator. Who is coming? I don't understand. The man gestured in the north-south direction, roughly asking where he came from. If you come from the north, your hometown will be Friazhou, otherwise it will be the famous street in Tonggishao. The green shirt guest said in Izhou's elegant words, Father Tong Yezhou, Do Yi. Follow the stranger. The man endured the discomfort in his heart and asked in a crappy Tong Yezhou Yayan, do you know the rules here? I just came here, I don't know. The man picked up a piece of paper, turned it over and swiped it forward on the table. Follow the items above and write clearly one by one. As soon as I heard that the other party was Monk Tong Yezhou, his face was not very good, but he didn't say anything badly at all. If it wasn't where his duties were, he would change to another place without looking at him. So the man who claimed to be Do Yi sat on a long bench, sat across the table with the 2 Jianxiu and began to write with a pen. The young man remained calm but asked the woman next to him with his heartfelt voice, how does this character read? The woman said helplessly, I don't know, it's the first time I have seen it. The man couldn't help but cursed in his heart, Gu Ris scholar. As expected, he is the from Tonggishao. The woman nodded lightly, agreeing. I never thought that the green shirt guest wrote more and more vigorously. He asked for a piece of paper and another. It was not over yet. Every time the other party finishes writing a sheet, the young Jianxiu stretches out his hand and takes one. Many of his words are uncommon and he recognizes Lao Tzu, but Lao Tzu doesn't recognize them. It's sour and sour. You treat yourself as our second shopkeeper. The woman Jianxiu looked at it with gusto. She wrote quite a bit of literary talent. Looking at the man in the blue shirt again, he is not handsome, he looks like Zhou Xian, but after a few more glances, it becomes more pleasing to the eye. I really saw that the green shirt guest was too dedicated to his work. Looking at the posture, I can write a few more sheets of paper. Because it is only the last page, I can write about how this guy has repeatedly fought and failed in the imperial court. After repeated battles, I finally got the title on the gold list. In fact, it has already exceeded 300 words. The man couldn't help but ask, can you drink alcohol? If you can drink, just rest for a while and write slowly. Drinks are not accepted. Money. While holding up a pen to write, the man raised his head and smiled. I can't drink enough. Forget about it. Drink, why don't you drink? Anyway, you don't charge money. The woman smiled when she heard the words and helped to pour a bowl of wine. The man in the green shirt puts down the brush in his hand, twists his wrist lightly, turns his head and invites. Xiaomo, sit down and drink together. You have to wait a while for your resume. Your writings are like a fountain tonight and you can't stop it. The young entourage with the weird name sat on one end of the bench, sitting with his dreaded, took the wine bowl, and then smiled and nodded with the woman Jianxiu in thanks. Lifted the bowl and took a sip of the drink. The man in the green shirt suddenly squinted his eyes and asked, It's not surprising, why did I suddenly understand your Mandarin in Fei Xingcheng? The woman smiled and said, It's not surprising anyway, it has already been sent to the city by flying swords. It turned out that the man Jianxiu deliberately switched to Fei Xingcheng Mandarin when he asked the other party whether to drink, and the green shirt guest was really stupid and took the bait. Qin Pingon nodded. The sword repair of the criminal officers line is very good. Brother Chisho is fine. They are all good brothers who have been in business. I must miss myself very much. Qin Pingon suddenly heard a cold voice behind him. Is the wine good? Probably means in fact I want to ask him if he is so troublesome. Is it fun? Do you want to visit the 4 clan cities and 8 hills before you go to Ascension City? Then why don't you just go to Zuanduguan and Sui Chugong to sit for a while? You have many friends anyway. Then when we arrive at Feishing City, sit down in our own restaurant, stroll around in the Summer Palace and take a look at the Cold Palace again. Xiao Imo has stood up and moved a few steps across. The 2 sword repairmen across the table looked at each other and then quickly got up. How did Ning Yao come? Then the 2 swordsmen saw that the green shirt lifted 1 foot and turned around and got up again, smiling and reaching out to Ning Yao. Ning Yao raised his brow. What do you mean? Qin Pingon smiled and said, take your heart. Ning Yao glared and said, something's wrong. The 2 sword repairmen and the city guarding Xianxia with a wave of imperial swords were a little dumbfounded. Did this guy drank too much wine from a certain liquor store and drank his brains stupidly, dare to talk to Ning Yao like this? Take 10,000 steps and say even if Ning Yao doesn't hack you to death if the second shopkeeper finds out, tsk. Qin Pingon shook his sleeves lightly, removed his blindfold and restored his true face, clasped his fists and smiled. Everyone, it's been a long time. The sword repairman who had thrown away his sword in the air immediately fell to the ground, and everyone clasped his fists and said solemnly, I have seen a hidden official. Regardless of whether Ning Yao is temporarily leading hermit, the 2 of them are a family anyway. Furthermore, no matter how you feel about the young hidden official, whether it is good or bad, everyone has to recognize that he is the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. A city, the sword lights all around in an instant, and at the same time the lights are lit up in sequence, extremely noisy for a time, and chaotic sounds one after another. The hidden official returned. Really? I'm a wine holder if I lie to you. The second shopkeeper of Goeri, take me in the shop. The second shopkeeper, there are people selling fake wine in Feishing City. You don't care about it? I can help lead the way. I said it a long time ago, the hermit is reluctant to bear our drinks here. There is nothing good in the world, don't leave if you come. Perhaps in the heart of Jianxiu of Feishingcheng, the hidden official of the Great Wall of Jianxi is no longer Xiao Yan or even Ning Yao. It may have always been the one standing alone at the head of the city, the one who is not human or ghost waving away from the whole Feishing City. The young man in China, the guy named Qin Pingon, is both a foreigner and a native of hometown.